Chapter 978. The endless stream of Yin soldiers tempered everyone's martial techniques in this life and death situation. Only by bringing out their strength to the peak could they persevere. The Yellow Springs Road was not easy to traverse. Even after walking for 3 months, they still could not see the way back. Everyone's strength had improved significantly here. Even Xiaoqin had completed the Summer Saber and Spring Saber in 3 months. Now, he could execute the complete flawless 4 seasons. More importantly, with the tempering of the headless Kitagarbha Bodhisattva behind him, Xiaoqian's saber soul successfully advanced to great perfection. For some reason, the headless Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's voice rang out in Xiaoqian's ears most of the time. All sorts of illusory voices turned into different people in Xiaoqian's heart, calling out his name. The voices were either sorrowful, joyful, pained, or desperate. Several times, Xiaoqin nearly turned his head back. However, his unwavering heart as a bladesman allowed him to persevere. The 4 strands of saber soul around the Wheel of Thunder became even brighter, reaching 7 strands. This was the sign of a great perfection saber soul. During the battle with the Yin soldiers, Xiaoqin merged the 2 into 1, forming his own unique lightning saber soul. In the end, when facing the great Grandmaster-level Yin soldiers, Xiaoqin would be able to block them by himself. Helplessness, helplessness. After another 5 days, a few cries of helplessness rang out in everyone's ears. Following that, the sound of flowing water filled the air. Xiaoqin and the others revealed joy on their faces as they looked to the front. At the limits of their vision, they finally saw a river blocking their way and the vague silhouette of a bridge. If there were no surprises, that should be the Bridge of Helplessness. The 3-life stone was beside the Bridge of Helplessness. After knocking off a piece, they would be able to collect the 3 items needed to revive Ao Jiao. Let's go. The fatigue of the past few days was swept away. Xiaoqin revealed joy on his face as he quickened his pace, quickly moving forward in this black and white world. 4 hours later, the group moved as fast as lightning and arrived before the Bridge of Helplessness. The headless Kitagarbha Bodhisattva, who had been following them, was no longer there. Black winds blew on the Bridge of Helplessness, and the water flowed endlessly. Qing Chang's expression froze as she muttered, "It broke, indeed, it was broken." Only half of the Bridge of Helplessness remained, hanging alone above the Helplessness River. It was unknown where the other half of the Nirvana cycle had drifted to when hell was shattered. However, whether it was broken or not had nothing to do with Xiaoqin. He was currently hammering on a huge rock beside the bridge. It was the Stone of 3 Lives. Unfortunately, its divinity was gone. If the infernal realm was still around and the 6 paths of reincarnation hadn't been destroyed, then the Stone of 3 Lives could reveal a person's past and future. After successfully knocking down a 3-life stone, Xiaoqin revealed a smile. After spending 4 months in the 9 hells of purgatory, he had finally gathered all 3 items. However, after thinking about it, Xiaoqin felt worried. The Saber School ranking competition had already begun in 4 months. By the time Xiaoqin rushed back, the once-a-decade Saber School ranking would have already ended. If he couldn't get the 10,000-year flame crystal, would Situ Leihong still call back Ao Jiao for him? Hehe, brother Xiaoqin, you don't have to worry anymore. Sister Ao Jiao will be back soon. Bai's face revealed a sincere expression of happiness. The mental tribulation that troubled brother Xiaoqin was finally resolved. If Bai encountered a disaster in the future, Xiaoqin's elder brother would be able to help him. Would he descend to the 9 underworlds, pass through the gates of hell, and walk to the Yellow Springs for his sake? Congratulations. Yuan Su and Kong Yuan also cupped their fists and congratulated him. Xiaoqin did not want to disappoint them, so he did not show the worry in his heart on his face. He said sincerely, "Many thanks to the 2 of you. If not for your help along the way, this Xiao would not have been able to make it here." Kong Yuan smiled and said, "Brother Xiao is too humble. Even without the 2 of us, with Brother Xiao's strength, you would have only needed a little more time to make it here." Yuan Su's expression suddenly changed. He pointed in the direction of the Bridge of Helplessness and said, "What is that ghost race girl trying to do? Why is she on the Bridge of Helplessness? She is about to fall off." Xiao Chen looked around and saw Qing Qing standing on the Bridge of Helplessness with a somewhat dazed expression. If she took another step, she would fall off. Whoosh! The situation was urgent. There was no time to think. Xiao Chen shot forward and landed on the Bridge of Helplessness, pulling Qing Qing back. Qing Qing recovered her wits, feeling like she just woke up from a dream. "Sorry, I just wanted to see if the cycle of reincarnation still exists." The immortal Tao no longer existed, and the 6 paths of reincarnation were shattered. Naturally, reincarnation no longer existed. Based on Qing Cheng's appearance, there was clearly something she was hiding. Xiao Chen was not willing to ask about other people's private matters. He said, "Let's go. The Bridge of Helplessness is broken, and we cannot cross this path. We should return." The way back, as long as they followed the source of the water of helplessness, they would be able to walk out of the 8th layer of purgatory. Qing Qing smiled bitterly. Just as she was about to step off the Bridge of Helplessness, suddenly, countless prayers and praises came from Xiao Chen's body. The black Bridge of Helplessness under his feet shone with a golden light. It turned into a golden jade Bridge of Helplessness. Golden diamonds extended from where it broke off. A bridge that led to the other shore automatically extended forward. This sudden scene confused everyone. Even Xiao Chen himself did not know what was going on. The golden jade Bridge of Helplessness extended all the way to the fog-covered world on the other shore. Yuan Su was stunned for a moment before he reacted. The golden jade Bridge of Helplessness. According to legend, when a person of great virtue dies and enters the heavenly Tao, the Bridge of Helplessness will become made of gold and jade. It will shine brightly and sweep away the death qi. Bai blinked and smiled. Elder brother Xiao Chen is a good person. The golden jade Bridge of Helplessness. Unfortunately, the cycle of reincarnation is already broken. Otherwise, you would be able to enter the heavenly Tao. The 3 chatted as they walked. Soon, they arrived at the Bridge of Helplessness. Then, they stood side by side with Xiao Chen. As they looked at the fog-covered world on the other shore, they felt somewhat curious. According to legend, after crossing the Bridge of Helplessness, one would arrive at the land of reincarnation, the 6 paths of reincarnation. Based on one's good and evil merits, one would be reborn. Qing Qing said in understanding, "I know why this golden jade Bridge of Helplessness appeared. In the skin-flaying hell, you purified tens of thousands of skeleton phantoms. Those were all evil spirits that had their skins flayed. They sank in Last Breath Lake for tens of thousands of years. Purifying them was a great merit." Xiao Chen did not care. Yes or no, it was not important. Now that the cycle of reincarnation was broken, no matter how great the merit was, it could not enter the heavenly Tao. Suddenly, Xiao Chen thought of the good and evil beneficence art in the painting where the Qing Emperor drew the saber. Then, he revealed a contemplative expression. "I want to go over and take a look. I will not give up until I personally see the cycle of reincarnation shatter." Qing Cheng's gaze was resolute. She took a step forward and rushed to the other shore. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the fog-covered world. "Don't move. I'll go and check on her." Xiao Chen frowned heavily. He waved his hand to stop Bai and the others. Then, he took a few large strides down the Bridge of Helplessness and arrived at the other shore. The fog before Xiao Chen slowly scattered, and a vast black sea appeared before his eyes. There were tens of thousands of aggrieved spirits and withered skeletons in the sea, all doing their best to move forward. These were the evil spirits of the various hells, wanting to escape the sea of bitterness and surpass the cycle of reincarnation. However, they did not know that the cycle of reincarnation was already broken. Even if they went over, it would still be a sea of bitterness. A gigantic headless monk sat cross-legged in the center of the sea. He formed the Universal World Seal with his left hand and the Amitabha Buddhist Seal with his right. A boundless might spread out from his body. It was like a tall mountain, like the sea, like the sky, like the earth. Xiaochen felt horrified. This was the physical body of the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva. The headless specter that he saw on the Yellow Springs Road was the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's body. The Buddhist light behind the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva should have been golden. However, in this black and white world, it looked very plain. Although the physical body was dead, the magic might still remained. The many withered skeletons in the Black Sea did their best to swim over, wanting to reach the world behind the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva and surpass the cycle of reincarnation. However, amid the formless magic might, with every step they took, their bodies shrank. The further they went, the more they shrank, becoming as insignificant as a grain of rice. It looked like they were advancing with every step. However, in reality, they were getting further and further away from the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva. They could never swim over. Xiaochen looked around and found Qingcheng. She was on a specter ship, doing her best to swim forward. Her body and the specter ship slowly shrank, not even realizing it. What kind of obsession does this girl have? The cycle of reincarnation is already broken. Even if she can cross this boundless Black Sea, what is the point? Furthermore, with the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's physical body here, there is no way to cross. Fortunately, she did not go far. If I am careful, I can pull her back. Qingcheng's specter ship had just left the shore. If she had gone any further, even if Xiaochen wanted to save her, he would not have been able to. Xiaochen stretched out his hand and tapped his forehead. He released the will of thunder and had it hover above his head. Unexpectedly, the purple lightning talisman did not turn black and white in this Yellow Springs realm. It remained purple, flickering with a dazzling electric light. When Xiaochen looked carefully, he saw that the incomprehensible strokes on the talisman gave off some kind of divine light and a faint immortal might. Xiaochen thought, this definitely has something to do with the powerful divine lightning in misleading Fog Lake. I wonder who the master of that divine lightning talisman is. Xiaochen only copied that person's talisman, yet it did not get assimilated in this black and white world. However, this was a good thing. With the lightning talisman above his head, Xiaochen leaped out and landed on the Black Sea. Xiaochen immediately felt a formless might bearing down on him, making it hard for him to move. That headless Kittagarbha Bodhisattva, who was originally only 5 kilometers away, immediately became 10 times farther. Xiaochen thought to himself, oh no. His body must have shrunk as well. He quickly brought out the will of thunder that contained his great perfection saber soul to its greatest might. His body trembled, and he suddenly grew several times larger. To Xiaochen, the skeletons paddling on the Black Sea were like ants. In reality, Xiaochen knew that it was not that his body had grown larger. Instead, it was that the skeletons in the water could not resist the might and pressure. Their bodies had shrunk significantly. Xiaochen took a step forward with much difficulty. Then, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the specter ship, along with Qingcheng, into his palm. Qingcheng, who was on the specter ship, still did not understand what was happening. She stood at the bow of the ship in a daze as she sent out several strong martial techniques. However, those martial techniques also became infinitely smaller in Xiaochen's palm. As long as they were in the Black Sea, they would not be able to fly out of Xiaochen's palm. Without any time to explain, Xiaochen turned to leave. However, just at this moment, something strange happened. Chapter 979. The Sea of Bitterness is boundless, turn back to the shore before it is too late. Put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. This is what the Buddha said. All life has a Buddhist nature. Good and evil, turning back and clinging to it, it is all in a single thought. If one's heart turns to Buddha, one can become a Buddha with one thought. Suddenly, boundless Buddhist chanting rang out in the surroundings of the Sea of Oblivion, merciful and merciful, calling for all life to turn back and become a Buddha. When the Buddhist chanting entered Xiaochen's ears, a seed appeared in his heart. All the evil deeds he had done in his life turned into a clinging thought in his mind, inflicting unbearable pain. That seed turned into a benevolent old monk sitting in a lotus flower, materializing a world of bliss. The pure land of ultimate bliss was created. There was joy everywhere and the light of Buddha shone brightly. There was no pain or torture. This startled Xiao Chen. This was to purify him, turning him into an idiotic follower. If he really listened to this Buddhist chanting and turned back, everything in the past would vanish like smoke. Losing himself would be even more horrifying than death. The purple lightning talisman above Xiao Chen's head quickly entered his sea of consciousness and shattered all the evil thoughts. The planted seed also disappeared. Huang Dang. After losing the protection of the will of thunder, Xiao Chen felt the world spin around him. It was like he fell from a tall cliff. When his feet landed firmly on the ground, he discovered that he was standing on Qing Cheng's specter ship. Xiao Chen, why are you here? Qing Cheng, who was at the bow of the ship, asked in shock. Her voice also contained a trace of unexpected joy. Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. Right now, he was probably like Qing Cheng, his body shrunk countless times. At this moment, the Buddhist chanting still lingered. Xiao Chen could not leave even if he brought out the will of thunder again. He could only speak to Qing Cheng and wait for an opportunity to leave. When Qing Cheng heard what Xiao Chen said, she could not help but turn pale. It turned out that everything that happened earlier was just walking on the spot. There was no way to cross this sea of bitterness. Qing Cheng said coldly, "This Kitagarbha Bodhisattva is really capable. He is trapped in this land of reincarnation, blocking the path of hope. He is no different from a bandit trying to take advantage of the situation." Xiao Chen thought about it and agreed. Since hell had been destroyed, the evil spirits in hell would naturally want to reincarnate and become human again. But this guy just had to die and block this place, causing people to be unable to cross this sea of bitterness for the rest of their lives. Then, he took the opportunity to preach about Buddhism, enlighten all living beings, and recruit followers. To put it nicely, he swore not to become a Buddha until hell was empty. "It's fine. I'll bring you out after." His Buddhist voice fades away, Xiao Chen said calmly. However, Qing Cheng shook her head resolutely. "You should go. I'm not going back. I must personally see the cycle of reincarnation shatter. Otherwise, I will not give up." Xiao Chen's expression flickered as he thought of something. "You want to resurrect someone through reincarnation, don't you? The 6 Taoists have already been shattered, reincarnation no longer exists." "This is impossible." Qing Cheng countered with a question, "Did you see it for yourself?" "Since I haven't seen it with my own eyes, it means that there's still hope. As long as there's a trace of hope, I won't give up." Xiao Chen said calmly, "I only believe in this life, not the next. Even if I see it with my own eyes, I won't believe it." Bang! Suddenly, a resplendent saber light appeared in the sky, illuminating this black and white world with many colors. The instant that saber light froze, it was like time and space were behind it. All the Buddhist chants vanished in an instant. The withered skeleton evil ghost that was struggling in the sea of bitterness suddenly became quiet, no longer screaming. The saber light flashed and instantly entered the headless Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's back. The world turned black and white again. What kind of saber light is this? How is it that even the might of the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva could not block it? It easily pierced through it, Xiao Chen muttered to himself. Although he felt excited, he still could not understand it. Qing Cheng said, "This is the saber light that the Qing Emperor left behind 10,000 years ago." The Qing Emperor was the one who chopped off the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's head. This is hope. If the 6 paths of reincarnation no longer exist, why would the Qing Emperor put in so much effort to fight this Kitagarbha Bodhisattva? Could the saber light from 10,000 years ago illuminate the entire Yellow Springs River? The Buddhist voice had already faded. If Xiao Chen wanted to leave, all he had to do was take out the will of thunder that contained his great perfection saber soul and leave the sea of bitterness. There was no need to struggle here. However, when Xiao Chen saw the stunning saber light that flashed by, he was certain that the Qing Emperor had chopped off the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva's head. Xiao Chen's heart wavered. Just because he did not want to think about some things did not mean that he did not want to know the answer. What's wrong? The Buddhist voice has already faded. Are you not going to leave? Qing Cheng asked with a smile. Xiaochen replied calmly, I'm not leaving. You don't have to leave either. Wait for a while. I'll bring you through this headless bald donkey. Qing Cheng's eyes lit up. She said, you have a way. Just wait. Xiaochen did not reply. He sat cross-legged at the bow of the warship and cultivated calmly, waiting for that saber light to arrive again. When that saber light arrived earlier, the blue dragon in the universe ring stirred restlessly. Whether it was as he guessed or not, he would be able to find out once more. When Qing Cheng saw the situation, she could only helplessly sit beside Xiaochen. She took out a green pearl and stared at it in a daze. A strand of soul was fixed in the transparent pearl, maintaining a leaping posture. Although the ghost race had the ability to collect souls after death, they did not have the ability to resurrect people. They could only refine all sorts of combat-type souls. Furthermore, after refining a soul, it would not be the original soul. It would just lose its intelligence and memories. Who is this person? Is she someone you want to resurrect? Xiaochen suddenly asked as he opened his eyes and looked at Qing Cheng. A nostalgic expression appeared on Qing Cheng's beautiful face. This is my mother. When she died, I was only 6 years old. My master kept her soul after she died. However, he could not bring her back to life. I've wanted to come to the Yellow Springs Road for a long time already. However, I could not make up my mind. I kept finding excuses for myself, saying that Last Breath Lake is too dangerous and that I should go when I am stronger. Ha! Actually, I know this myself. I'm just afraid of this final hope shattering, not daring to face it. If not for you wanting to come to the Yellow Springs Road, I do not know when I would be able to take this step. There are some things that I have to see for myself before I can feel at ease. Xiaochen could hear the sadness in Qing Cheng's voice. She also knew that even if he crossed this sea of bitterness, all that awaited him was a sad ending. However, as she said, there were some things that he had to see for himself before he could feel at ease. 3 life stone, soul returning grass, and Paramitha flower. You collected these to revive the item spirit, right? Qing Cheng asked Xiaochen, changing the topic. Seeing Xiaochen's somewhat surprised expression, Qing Cheng smiled and said, don't find it strange. This secret technique actually originated from my ghost race. Unfortunately, it is useless on living creatures. However, based on your expression, you do not seem to be very happy. Didn't you already collect all 3 items? Unexpectedly, this Qing Cheng was so observant. Xiaochen answered honestly, I missed the timing. I did not expect that I would have to walk the Yellow Springs Road for 3 months. Xiaochen's original plan was to collect the 3 items and return within 3 months. That way, he would be able to participate in the Saber School ranking competition and obtain the 10,000-year-old flame crystal, successfully reviving Ao Jiao. After that, it would be the king conferral ceremony in another 2 months. Everything was going according to plan. However, who could have imagined that just the Yellow Springs Road would take 3 months? Adding on the 1 month before that, the Saber School ranking competition would definitely start. Xiaochen would definitely not be able to obtain the 10,000-year-old flame crystal. He did not know how to inform Situ Leihong. Qing Cheng smiled and said, in that case, it looks like you are in some trouble. Situ Leihong is a very difficult person to talk to. He does not even give face to a sovereign martial emperor. Xiaochen did not feel confident. If he had no other choice, he could only ask the sect master to personally make a trip. The sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and the shore is at hand, the Buddhist chanting rang out once more. The many skeleton phantoms in the sea of bitterness all struggled and roared in pain. However, Xiaochen, who was on the specter ship, had been waiting for a long time already. As he resisted the torture of the Buddhist chanting, he waited quietly in anticipation. The saber light that illuminated the entire Yellow Springs Road appeared once more, shattering the Buddhist chanting and illuminating this black and white world with many colors again. The blue dragon medallion in the universe ring started trembling intensely again. Without saying anything, Xiaochen grabbed the blue dragon medallion with a flip of his hand. Whoosh! A strong light shot out. Xiaochen and Qingqing closed their eyes at the same time. When they opened their eyes again, they were shocked to discover that the saber light was no longer there. Instead, the blue dragon medallion became dazzling. The blue dragon medallion lit up the surrounding 100 meters with many colors. It was a stark contrast to the black and white world on the sea. Unexpectedly, the Qing Emperor's medallion sucked in that saber light that had existed for 10,000 years. At the same time, Qingqing was shocked to discover that the skeleton phantoms beside the specter ship earlier were now as small as ants. The distance between the two and the headless Kittagarbha Bodhisattva was no longer endless. There were only 5 kilometers left. This would not take much time for the two. Let's go. I'll bring you over. The specter ship carried the two into the air and flew. The 5 kilometers were covered in less than the time it took to brew a pot of tea. When the two got closer, they discovered that blood flowed continuously from the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's head. The sea of bitterness before them was made of the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva's blood. When the two saw this, they could not help but feel horrified, their hair standing on end. After flying past the headless Kittagarbha Bodhisattva, the other parties might vanished. Xiaochen stretched out his hand and grasped the blue dragon medallion above his head. He revealed a smile on his face. No matter what, this unexpected harvest of saber light was indeed a big surprise. In the future, if Xiaochen met with an opponent he could not defeat, he could use this saber light to defeat the blue-robed emperor. Behind the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva were the 6 paths of reincarnation. There were 6 huge, shattered whirlpools. Each whirlpool represented a cycle of reincarnation. From the right, they were the heavenly Tao, the Azura Tao, the human Tao, the animal Tao, the hungry ghost Tao, and the hell Tao. Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. The 6 paths of reincarnation were shattered beyond recognition. There was no way to reincarnate. The worry in his heart vanished. Just as Xiaochen was about to say something, he saw Qingqing walk over to the whirlpool representing the heavenly Tao and toss in the pearl containing her mother's soul. This is... Xiaochen felt confused. The shattering of the 6 paths of reincarnation did not seem to affect Dao Qingqing. She smiled and said, "Consider it a thought. According to rumor, after one enters the heavenly Tao, they can be reborn in the immortal world. They can leave their mortal bodies and not suffer the pain of the 6 paths of reincarnation." Chapter 980. Without the cycle of reincarnation, there was nothing much to see here. Xiaochen accompanied Qingqing to watch for a while before turning to leave. However, what the two did not know was that the instant Xiaochen turned around, the shattered human path whirlpool merged back together, forming a complete cycle whirlpool. A treasure light gathered, and a mysterious passageway opened, leading to an unknown place. Xiaochen sensed something and turned his head back to look. The complete cycle passageway only existed for an instant before it broke apart long ago. He did not see anything. Qingqing turned her head back as well and asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Xiaochen smiled and thought to himself, the 6 paths of reincarnation are really broken. There is only this life in the world, there is no next life. The two successfully crossed the Sea of Bitterness and met up with Bai's group again on the Bridge of Helplessness. After a simple explanation of what happened, they set off. On the way back, the group followed Qingqing's directions and placed the Spectre ship on the Bridge of Helplessness, heading upstream. Half a day later, the Bridge of Helplessness was broken. After passing through a patch of fog, the group miraculously appeared in the underworld land, the place that separated Yin and Yang. Qingqing smiled and explained, "Don't find it strange. After the hell shattered, several spatial tears formed. Several of these spatial tears are not too dangerous. Instead, they are shortcuts to the 9 layers of purgatory. However, only our ghost race knows about them. When the group returned to the surface, they all took in deep breaths. They finally made it out of the 9 layers of purgatory alive. Qing Qing returned the cycle banner to Xiao Qin. Then, she smiled and said, "I'll take my leave. There are less than 2 months left to your king conferral ceremony. At that time, if nothing unexpected happens, I will go and join in the excitement." After getting rid of her mental tribulation, Qing Qing felt much more relaxed. After saying goodbye to everyone, she left calmly. There was half a month between the sword school ranking competition and the saber school ranking competition. Based on the time, they should still be able to make it if they rushed back now. Xiao Qin used the freedom wings and so close yet worlds apart continuously. Finally, he managed to send Bai over before the competition began. However, Xiao Qin was not as lucky. The saber school ranking competition had already ended 7 days ago. The saber sovereign Wu Xiaotian's first disciple, Wen Ziren, successfully made it into the top 10. News of this had already spread throughout the entire profound domain, spreading his name everywhere. Xiao Qin felt somewhat nervous as he arrived at Sword Forging Peak. He did not know if Situ Leihong would be able to accommodate him or not. Sword Forging Peak was the same as before. Swordsmen seeking Situ Leihong to forge swords lined up from the top of the mountain to the bottom in an orderly fashion. Xiao Qin did not line up. Instead, he headed for the sword forging mountain manor at the top of the mountain amidst everyone's gazes. Its Qin came. And came. White-robed Xiao Qin defeated the first disciple of the sword sovereign Lu Xiaoyun in Heavenly Cauldron City 4 months ago. He probably earned a lot at the longevity fruit auction 3 months ago. I remember that a few old quasi-emperors rushed over and pushed the price of the longevity fruit to a sky-high price. Several great grandmaster-level martial sages did not manage to buy it. However, it is strange. The saber school ranking is held once every 10 years. Given his strength, he should have a chance to make it into the top 10. Why is he not there? If it were in the past, the name Xiao Qin would have been somewhat distant to the people of the profound domain. However, Xiao Qin had easily defeated the Purple Knight Sword Sex Ouyang Feng at Sword Forging Peak. Then, he held a high-profile auction for the longevity fruit. After that, he defeated the Sword Sovereign's Qin Chen's first disciple in Heavenly Cauldron City. The most famous person in the profound domain was none other than Xiao Qin. Along the way, Xiao Qin listened to the discussions around him without showing any expression. He had something on his mind. He wanted to meet Situ Leihong quickly, but he did not know how to bring it up when he did. Suddenly, Xiao Qin felt 2 pairs of eyes filled with hatred and murderous intent. They did not hide their murderous intent at all as they stared at him. Xiao Qin turned his head and looked in the direction of the gaze. His lips curled up involuntarily, revealing a smile. The owner of this gaze was the person who wanted to teach Xiao Qin a lesson when he first arrived at Sword Forging Peak. In the end, Xiao Qin ended up getting slapped in the face by Ouyang Feng, who got slapped down by his own senior. There was an old man beside Ouyang Feng. This old man also wore the robes of the Purple Knight Sword sect and looked very similar to Ouyang Feng. Based on this appearance, it was not hard to guess that they were father and son. This old man was a great grandmaster-level martial sage. He was in high spirits, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. This old man did not look old at all. His eyes were like swords. Everywhere he looked, it was like a sharp sword piercing through space. Xiao Qin took a glance and lost interest. It was best not to provoke this old man. Otherwise, he would not mind using a great grandmaster-level martial sage to test his strength and see how strong he was. After taking a few steps, Xiao Qin overtook the 2 of them. "Stop right there." Ouyang Feng whispered a few words into the old man's ear, and that old man's expression turned extremely unsightly. Then, he shouted coldly, stopping Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin could not be bothered with this old man, so he continued walking forward. Whoosh! The purple-robed old man was enraged. He took a big stride forward and arrived in front of Xiao Qin. Then, he said, "Little friend, did you not hear what this old man said? This one is telling you to stop. Xiao Chen did not mind. He smiled and said, my legs are under my feet. What does it have to do with you whether I stop or not? You have a sharp tongue. Let this old man ask you. 4 months ago, did you use your strength to bully the weak, sow dissension, and injure my son? The purple-robed old man asked with an overbearing aura. Indeed, they were really father and son. With this, Xiao Chen probably could not enter the mountain manor directly. However, Xiao Chen did not show any fear. He smiled gently and said, what you said is true. However, did I injure your son? How come I don't remember? I think it was just a gentle touch. At that time, many people could prove it. Your old friend, Diao Jintao, could prove it as well. At the mention of this matter, the purple-robed old man could not stop the rage in his eyes from spewing out. He spent a lot of effort to calm himself down. If not for the purple-robed old man running around seeking miraculous medicinal pills, Xiao Chen would not be able to recover without at least half a year. To think that the purple-robed old man was not embarrassed to say that it was just a gentle touch. As for that Diao Jintao, this was the name that the purple-robed old man did not want to hear the most. For the sake of a longevity fruit, Diao Jintao disregarded their relationship of many years and directly sent Ouyang Fengfan tumbling down the mountain. This was simply an extraordinary humiliation. Good, very good. In that case, this old man will gently touch you as well. After the purple-robed old man said this through clenched teeth, he no longer suppressed his rage. He stepped forward and sent a palm strike at Xiao Chen. The purple-robed old man thought that it would be too degrading for him, a great grandmaster-level martial sage, to draw his sword to deal with a junior. However, the purple-robed old man relied on his huge advantage in cultivation to send a palm strike over. When the palm strike flew out, the wind howled. At the level of great grandmaster-level martial sage, a casual palm strike could break mountains. Furthermore, this palm strike was sent out in rage. The surging palm wind combined with the purple-robed old man's mountain-like heavy aura. Before the palm wind arrived, a huge pressure already pressed down. Several of the people behind Xiao Chen could not help but move back. However, Xiao Chen himself did not move at all. When he saw the horrifying aura of the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva, the might of the purple-robed old man's palm strike was like child's play to Xiao Chen. Since the other party was being arrogant and did not even draw his sword, then there was no need for him to draw his sword. Myriad Heaven Divine Fist, Deities Descending, 20 Dragon Force. Dragon roars resounded, and 20 huge dragon-shaped strands of energy appeared behind Xiao Chen. They soared up and down, stirring up the sky and making the sky change color. They roared in unison, and dragon might covered the sky, not giving the purple-robed old man any chance to regret. When Xiao Chen faced this palm strike that was as fast as a storm and as mighty as a mountain, he took a step forward and met it head-on. Bang! When the fist and palm met, a horrifying sound rang out. Xiao Chen's punch sent the purple-robed old man flying back. The purple-robed old man's eyes widened in shock. He opened his mouth and vomited a mouthful of blood. After the purple-robed old man landed, he felt incredible pain in his right hand. Cracks spread out on his bones. His entire right arm was temporarily crippled. Xiao Chen stood upright with his hands behind his back. He smiled and said, I'm sorry, old sir. My body is very brittle and cannot be touched. I am not like your son, who has thick skin. After smiling faintly, Xiao Chen swaggered off. The purple-robed old man trembled in anger. However, he had been too careless this time. His right hand was temporarily crippled, and he could not hold a sword at all. Even if the purple-robed old man wanted to take revenge, he did not have the strength to continue fighting. The other swordsmen lining up on the mountain all showed extremely grave expressions. The purple-robed old man, Ouyang Long, was a bona fide great grandmaster-level martial sage. However, even such a great grandmaster-level martial sage wanted to bully the weak. Yet, with one punch from Xiao Chen, he did not dare to retaliate. When the purple-robed old man saw the other party swagger off, he did not even dare to give chase. How unfortunate. This Xiao Chen is not participating in the saber school rankings competition. What a pity. With such strength, he can definitely compete with Wen Xiren. In the past few years, the momentum of my sword Dao lineage has been completely suppressed by the saber Dao lineage. Wen Xiren already suppressed the profound domain's younger generation swordsmen to the point where they could not even raise their heads. Now, another Xiao Chen appeared. Ha! If only Yan Shisan were here. With Yan Shisan's strength and talent, he would definitely be able to compete with those two. Yan Shisan is obsessed with the sword Dao. He has never been interested in the sword school ranking. He is nowhere to be found. Even the Yan clan does not know where he is. The swordsmen present all gave the purple-robed old man some face. Even after Xiao Chen sent him flying with one punch, no one mocked him. Ouyang Feng walked over to the purple-robed old man and grumbled, "Father, what's wrong with you? Why are you speaking so much nonsense? Just go up and chop him down with one strike." Pa! Ouyang Long was already upset after losing so much face. When he heard Ouyang Feng's grumbling, he immediately slapped Ouyang Feng. "Shut up." Ouyang Long's expression turned extremely cold. He could not be bothered with Ouyang Feng anymore. He sat down cross-legged and circulated his energy to treat his injuries, quickly recovering from the injuries on his right arm. Ouyang Long was prepared to wait for Xiao Chen to come out. At that time, he would not give Xiao Chen a chance and would directly fight him with his sword. If Ouyang Long could not defeat Xiao Chen today, he could forget about staying in the profound domain in the future. Inside Sword Forging Manor, when Xiao Chen saw Situ Leihong's calm appearance, he did not know what to say. After all, back then, Xiao Chen had said that he would help the other party obtain the 10,000-year-old flame crystal. Now, he was going back on his word. Furthermore, he needed the other party's help. After thinking for a while, Situ Leihong still did not say anything. Xiao Chen could only probe, "Senior, I'm sorry about the 10,000-year-old flame crystal. I came late." Chapter 981. Situ Leihong smiled and said, "It's fine. I knew about it long ago and already made arrangements." "What arrangements?" "Wen Xiren just agreed to your challenge. He will fight you 7 days from now. The wager is the 10,000-year-old flame crystal," Situ Leihong said unhurriedly. Xiao Chen exclaimed in shock, "Challenge? When was that? How come I don't remember challenging him?" Situ Leihong did not act like a senior at all. He smiled and said, "I helped you make the challenge. Why don't you agree? If you don't agree, I can cancel it." Xiao Chen was speechless. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "Senior is really considerate." Well said, well said. There is no need to thank me for this. Just help me get the 10,000-year-old flame crystal," Situ Leihong said casually, waving his hand. To think that Xiao Chen had been on tenterhooks for a long time. However, Situ Leihong had already made arrangements for him. "I will hand the 10,000-year-old flame crystal to Senior 7 days from now. I will leave the lunar shadow saber to Senior." After thinking for a while, Xiao Chen took out the lunar shadow saber, the 3-life stone, the permetha flower, and the soul-returning grass. Situ Leihong nodded and waved his hand. "Wait for the good news. You don't have to worry about me. Let's go. I will not send you off." Since Situ Leihong sent him off with tea, naturally, Xiao Chen did not intend to remain. Xiao Chen was still thinking about the results of the longevity fruits auction. He did not know how much wealth it had brought him and whether he could use it to buy some secret treasures containing dragon souls. For Wen Xiren to be able to enter the top 10 of the Saber School ranking, he definitely had the strength to defeat great grandmaster level martial sages. However, Xiao Chen did not know how strong he was. Xiao Chen needed to ask Ying Qiong about all these things. He had to meet the other party quickly. The moment Xiao Chen left the mountain manor, he did not have time to think. A resplendent sword light shot at him like a meteor tearing through the sky. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and quickly materialized the flawless saber Dao. He used his body as a saber and his hand as the edge. With one move, the saber changed hundreds of times. His hair, clothes, shoulders, and arms, there was not a single part that was not a saber. A boundless saber hum resounded throughout the sky. As Xiao Chen's hair fluttered, he thrust his finger forward and clashed with this sword light. Bang! A purple energy burst forth from Xiao Chen's fingertips. A thunderous roar resounded as the 100-meter sword light shattered. The purple-clad old man, Ouyang Long, had been storing up power and waiting for a long time. Yet, Xiao Chen broke it with a finger. Xiao Chen's figure flashed and he arrived in midair. When he met Ouyang Long's gaze, he felt incomparably furious. He said coldly, "Your skin is extraordinarily thick. A great Grand Master level martial sage actually sneak attacked me." Ouyang Long's right hand had already recovered, and he was holding a 4-foot-long sword that gleamed with a cold light. A boundless sword intent flowed out from the tip of the sword, and the sword wind howled. It came and went without a trace for 5 kilometers, stirring up the clouds in all directions. He said in a cold voice, "Cut the crap. If you cannot get past me today, you can forget about leaving Sword Forging Peak." The swordsmen below looked at each other. They did not expect Ouyang Long to be so angry. This time, Xiao Chen is in trouble. Earlier, Ouyang Long did not use his sword and got injured in his carelessness. Now, he is probably serious. Youths should not show off too much. If Xiao Chen had taken Ouyang Long's palm strike and let him get back at him, this matter might have passed. Ouyang Long has cultivated for 400 years and is a great Grandmaster level martial sage of the Sword Dao. If he used his full strength, there would not be any suspense in dealing with a junior. As the discussions rang out, everyone shook their heads. They did not think much of Xiao Chen. When a great Grandmaster level martial sage truly got angry, the energy that burst out would be a horrifying scene. Ouyang Feng, who was below, was incredibly excited. His father finally used his full strength. This time, it would be easy. As long as Xiao Chen's hand was injured, Ouyang Feng would personally step forward and ruthlessly stomp on Xiao Chen's face to wash away his shame. Otherwise, the anger in his heart would never dissipate. Don't blame this old man for bullying the weak today. I'll give you 3 moves. As long as you can receive these 3 moves, this grudge will be written off, Ouyang Long said expressionlessly. Xiao Chen's expression turned extremely sullen. He found it very funny. Written off? Such an overbearing attitude made it seem like he was the one in the wrong. Back then, on Sword Forging Peak, Ouyang Feng had been mocking Xiao Chen, attacking with vicious moves. Xiao Chen had endured many times before he was forced to make a move. Even when he made a move, he did not take Xiao Chen's life. Today, the same scene happened on Sword Forging Peak. Xiao Chen was careless and got injured, unable to even hold his sword. As long as Xiao Chen took another step forward, he would have been able to defeat Xiao Chen in a sorry state. However, Xiao Chen did not do so. In the end, not only did Xiao Chen not appreciate his kindness, but after he recovered, he disregarded his status and sneak-attacked Xiao Chen. Furthermore, he pretended to be righteous, saying that he would settle this grudge in 3 moves. How laughable! How extremely laughable! A white-robed figure flew sharply in the air. As his long hair fluttered, it revealed a delicate face with a Neptune headscarf. His facial features were distinct and hid a hidden sharpness. Whoosh! Xiao Chen removed the blue headscarf from his forehead, and his aura suddenly changed. Xiao Chen's originally delicate and reserved face immediately turned sharp. The state of kingship was incredibly tyrannical. A smile appeared on Xiao Chen's face. He said, "What a good, settling this grudge in 3 moves. Ouyang Long, you really think highly of yourself. What do you have to settle this grudge with me in 3 moves? Today, I will defeat you in 3 moves. It is fine if this grudge is not settled." Right after Xiao Chen spoke, his will of thunder, which contained his great perfection saber soul, surged out with boundless might. A light flashed on Xiao Chen's forehead, and a purple lightning talisman hovered above his head. Immediately, thunderclouds churned in the sky for 5 kilometers around. As they moved up and down, lightning flashed and thunder roared. There was a boundless sharpness in these berserk thunderclouds. It was like the thunderclouds for 5 kilometers around were an inextinguishable treasure saber. In an instant, it suppressed Ouyang Long, who unleashed his aura without holding anything back and stirred up the winds and clouds. Great perfection saber soul. The people below felt the swords in their hands tremble, about to fall out of their hands. They prostrated themselves on the ground, their expressions filled with extreme shock. It really is a great perfection saber soul. A small perfection saber soul is already sufficient to fight a great perfection sword soul. A great perfection saber soul can completely suppress Ouyang Long's small perfection sword soul. With this, he can make up for the difference in cultivation. Flawless night, perfect and flawless moon. Xiao Chen swiped his fingertip, and resplendent moonlight suddenly bloomed. The sky immediately turned dark. Back then, when Xiao Chen used his full power, this flawless bright moon had blocked Diwuk's split-second initial knowledge. Now that Xiao Chen's strength had improved significantly, and more importantly, his saber soul had reached great perfection. The might of this flawless bright moon had increased significantly. The moon on Xiao Chen's fingertip shone with a dazzling light and an overwhelming might. The light made it difficult for Ouyang Long to open his eyes. Ouyang Long's expression had long since changed. When he saw this full moon, he brandished his sword. 900 purple night sword formations appeared in the air around him. As they spun, they formed a large purple night sword formation. Boom! The bright moon on Xiao Chen's fingertip turned into a saber light and crashed into this large sword formation. Whoosh! 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 The sword formation lasted for a moment before crumbling in the air. Strands of sword light scattered in all directions, blasting the surrounding mountains for 50 kilometers into pieces. Only the sword chi that landed on Sword Forging Peak was easily erased by a mysterious energy. Spring, summer, autumn wind, winter snow. Flawless 4 seasons, growing and multiplying endlessly. After Xiao Chen's flawless bright moon broke Ouyang Long's purple night sword formation, he stood on a lightning dragon. With a flash of electric light, he charged over to Ouyang Long, who had retreated 1 kilometer. Red peach blossoms filled the sky. Peach blossoms bloomed, filling the air with a fragrance. There was no spring wind or saber light. The blazing sun was like the high noon sun, burning everything in the world. Its light was like a saber, and the blazing sun was like a sharp blade. The merciless autumn wind swept through the world, leaving nothing alive. Winter snow drifted in the air. No color could be seen for 50 kilometers around. The world was one color, and no saber light could be seen. Endless cycles, growing and multiplying endlessly. This was the first time Xiao Chen completely executed the repaired flawless 4 seasons. The various mysterious phenomena of flawless 4 seasons cycled continuously. Spring saber, summer saber, autumn saber, and winter saber. 4 sabers chopped down, cycling endlessly. In the sky, Xiao Chen forced Ouyang Long back 50 kilometers. As Xiao Chen approached, thunderclouds spread for 5 kilometers around. The thunderclouds stretched endlessly, surging with shocking thunder. Flawless blue dragon, subduing dragon profound slash. 18 azure saber lights filled the sky and the ground, containing the subduing dragon profound slash. As they flickered, they struck Ouyang Long at nearly the same time. Pu ci. Ouyang Long vomited a mouthful of blood. This saber strike knocked him back again, landing on Sword Forging Peak with a loud bang. The surroundings fell silent. When Xiao Chen said that he would defeat Ouyang Long in 3 moves, he did so in a clean and efficient manner, not dragging his feet at all. Ouyang Feng looked at Ouyang Long, who fell back to the ground. His eyes were filled with shock, and he gaped speechlessly. The scene that Ouyang Feng imagined did not happen. His father did not beat Xiao Chen to the point where he could not retaliate. Instead, his father was defeated in 3 moves. "Father, how are you?" Ouyang Feng asked worriedly as he picked up Ouyang Long. Whoosh. A strong wind scattered, and Xiao Chen landed calmly without any expression on his face. The many swordsmen who were watching immediately opened up a path. "I'll kill you, you bastard." When Ouyang Feng saw Xiao Chen land, his eyes immediately turned bloodshot. He charged at Xiao Chen without care for anything else. His entire body was full of openings, and he did not have any technique at all. Xiao Chen's figure flashed, and his clothes fluttered. As his hair fluttered, one could hear the metallic clanging of sabers as he easily dodged Ouyang Feng. After that, Xiao Chen grabbed Ouyang Feng, who had brushed past him, and pulled him back, tossing him forcefully. The mountain peak trembled, and Ouyang Feng landed heavily on the ground. Then, he vomited a large mouthful of blood, and his complexion instantly paled. When Ouyang Feng thought about the strength that Xiao Chen had just displayed, he calmed down. Now, he was so frightened that his body trembled. "Xiao Chen, I admit defeat. I swear that from today onwards, I will never seek trouble for you again." As Ouyang Long watched Xiao Chen walk over, he felt fear in his heart for some reason. Then, he pulled down his old face and begged for mercy. Xiao Chen's expression did not change as he stopped walking. His expression was unfathomable. Ouyang Long clenched his teeth and took off the spatial ring in his hand. He said, "These are the resources that I always carry with me. There are 3 million black astral coins and 5,000 kilograms of various divine materials in there. I only beg you to let us father and son off today. I guarantee that I will not seek trouble for you again." Chapter 982. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and grabbed the spatial ring. Then, his figure flashed, and he quickly left this place. These 2 father and son were not benevolent people. Although they said that, they definitely would not do it. Xiao Chen wanted to kill the 2. However, he did not want to see blood on this sword-forging peak. After all, whether Ao Jiao could be revived depended on Situ Leihong. Secondly, the 2 had the Purple Knight Sword Sect, one of the 9 ranks of the great families, behind them. Although the Purple Knight Sword Sect's strength and accumulations were not comparable to the peak of the 9 ranks of the great families like the Haotian sect, they were in the profound domain. However, in the profound domain, offending the Purple Knight Sword Sect in the other party's main camp would be problematic. After a few flashes, Xiao Chen stood on a lightning dragon and vanished from the many swordsmen of Sword Forging Peak. "If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place?" Seeing the Ouyang father and son on the ground in sorry states, the other swordsmen all sighed softly. They were also swordsmen, but when they saw Ouyang Long defeated by a bladesman like Xiao Chen, they all felt some resentment. To some extent, these people all held grudges against Xiao Chen. If it were a regular battle, they might have made a move to help, even blocking that bladesman. However, after seeing Xiao Chen's strength and sighing at the speed of his growth, these people felt apprehensive and could only watch as Xiao Chen left. Furthermore, the 2 had brought this upon themselves for being in such a sorry state. As the saying went, the evils brought upon themselves are the hardest to bear. They would not gain much sympathy. After flying for 250 kilometers in one breath, Xiao Chen casually stopped on the top of a tree. Then, he closed his eyes and replayed the earlier battle in his mind. The earlier 3 moves could all be considered martial techniques surpassing heaven-ranked. With the support of his great perfection Saber Soul, their might had more than doubled. These were Xiao Chen's 3 strongest killing moves. In today's battle, he mainly relied on his great perfection Saber Soul. If not for his great perfection Saber Soul, Flawless Bright Moon would not have burst forth with such strong might, suppressing Ouyang Long's aura in one go. If Ouyang Long had comprehended a great perfection Sword Soul as well, this battle would have been even more difficult. After defeating his opponent in 3 moves, Xiao Chen maintained a calm mind, gaining a clear understanding of his own strength. After a while, Xiaochen opened his eyes, and an expression of comprehension appeared in them. He pushed off the ground and left in satisfaction. 2 days later, Ying Qiong, who had received Xiaochen's message, met at the largest inn in Heavenly Cauldron, Xiaochen. Jean de Bao and old Jiu also went with them. The two of them had good expressions on their faces. Clearly, they were very satisfied with the way they handled the black goods. Chen's face and said, he, Dragon said, Chen said, he of the two. Lord, had, he, and said. Xiaochen had, and Xiao had. Fatty Jean said enviously, comparing oneself to others is really infuriating. This fat lord spent a lot of effort to sell those goods for 5 million black astral coins. You did not even do anything, and you managed to get 30 million black astral coins. However, Xiaochen did not feel too surprised. This fat lord had spent a lot of effort to sell those goods for 5 million black astral coins. You did not even do anything, and you automatically obtained 30 million black astral coins. However, Xiaochen did not feel too surprised. He had heard those swordsmen talk about it at Sword Forging Peak. A few old blue-robed emperors, who were nearing the end of their lifespans, had come to the auction of the longevity fruit. Naturally, the blue-robed emperor was wealthy. After his people died, he would gain nothing. For the sake of his lifespan, he was willing to spend money. Xiaochen drank a cup of wine and said, I'll give you another longevity fruit. I do not have any requirements. Help me spend all 30 million black astral coins in 3 days. Kim Taeho and Lord Jiu gaped. What do you want me to do? 30 million black astral coins? I need to spend it all in 3 days. Ying Qiong felt confused as well. Doubt filled her pretty face. Help me collect secret treasures containing dragon souls. They have to be at least sage grade. If there are king grade ones, don't let them go, no matter how much money you have. Ying Qiong frowned slightly and said with some difficulty, secret treasures containing dragon souls are not easy to find. I'm afraid it will not be easy to spend these 30 million black astral coins. Xiaochen nodded and said, I know. Incomplete secret treasures will do as well. Ying Qiong smiled and said, incomplete secret treasures will do as well. In that case, this will be easy. The Flourishing Heaven Pavilion has stores all over the Kunlun realm. Every year, there will be piles of incomplete secret treasures. After chatting for a while, the topic shifted to the duel between Xiaochen and Wen Ziren. In merely 2 days, the news of Xiaochen's duel with Wen Ziren spread throughout the entire Profound Domain. If there was anyone in the Profound Domain who could rival Xiaochen in fame, it would naturally be Wen Ziren. The Saber School ranking was established once every 10 years. It had been passed down for tens of thousands of years since the ancient era. However, in the past 1,000 years, no one from the younger generation managed to make it into the top 10. When Ziren managed to make it into the top 10 despite a group of great grandmaster-level martial sages participating, obtaining the 6th rank. Once this news spread, it caused an uproar. Speaking of which, why did you think of challenging Wen Ziren? Given your character, you would not be so ostentatious, right? Ying Qiong asked with a smile. Clearly, he had guessed that there was more to it than meets the eye. Kim Taeho looked around and chuckled. Brother Xiao, how confident are you of winning? This fat lord will go and start the bet. If I don't take advantage of this opportunity to make some money, it would be too unfortunate. Xiaochen entered deep thought. Then, he said, I do not know much about Wen Ziren, so I can't say for sure. However, I have to win this match. Suddenly, footsteps came from downstairs. A group of guards escorted the Heavenly Cauldron City's young city lord to the top floor. When the young city lord saw Xiaochen, he smiled faintly and tossed a heavy wooden box to the young city lord. Xiaochen stretched out his hand and caught it. After he opened it, an overwhelming heatwave spewed out, and flames assaulted him. If not for Xiaochen's strength being far greater than before, he would definitely be injured if he opened this box. Xiaochen had always been extremely calm. However, when he saw this item, he could not help feeling excited. He quickly closed the box, and his expression changed somewhat. "Brother Xiao, there is no need to overthink. Senior brother told me to deliver this. 5 days from now, he will have a fair fight with you in Heavenly Saber City. It will be a simple fight, and he does not want you to be disturbed by anything." The item in the box was none other than the 10,000-year-old flame crystal that Xiao Chen dreamed of. When Xiren's breadth of mind surpassed Xiao Chen's expectations. Xiao Chen's favorable impression of this bladesman, whom he had never met before, immediately improved significantly. With the 10,000-year-old flame crystal in hand, Xiao Chen no longer felt any burden. Late at night, in the guest room, Xiao Chen looked at the wooden box containing the 10,000-year-old flame crystal and entered deep thought. There were still 5 more days before the fight with Wen Xiren. Now that he had obtained the 10,000-year-old flame crystal, this fight would be much simpler. However, this was a fight between bladesmen. There was no need for Xiao Chen to think about the consequences of losing. Without any burden, he could just fight to his heart's content. Xiao Chen did not know what kind of person Wen Xiren was. However, at the very least, this breadth of mind greatly increased Xiao Chen's interest in this fight. After putting away the wooden box, Xiao Chen silently flew out of the window and arrived at a desolate place outside the city. If Xiao Chen wanted to test his moves, he naturally had to find a large, quiet place with no one around. An inn was definitely not an option. Xiao Chen could only go outside the city. He would return 3 days later and meet with Ying Qiong. The night was cold and desolate. Occasionally, a cold wind blew in the forest, rustling the leaves. There were still 3 more moves of the myriad heaven divine fist, eternal myth, dusk of deities, and burial of deities. Xiao Chen had never truly executed these 3 moves before. Even among the deity race, those who could practice these 3 moves were few and far between. Without reaching a certain age and cultivation realm, or with extraordinary comprehension ability, one would not be able to do so. The final 3 moves of the myriad heaven divine fist were also known as forbidden moves among the deity race. They possessed extremely horrifying might. They would not be any weaker than the divine sovereign's secret techniques that every divine sovereign left behind. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and allowed the magic energy in his sea of consciousness to start surging bit by bit. As he circulated the myriad heaven divine fist, motes of golden light shot out from Xiao Chen's body, illuminating the forest. The golden light gathered, and a deity statue suddenly appeared behind Xiao Chen. This deity statue looked no different from Xiao Chen. However, it looked solemn and dignified, exuding might without being angry. Eternal myth. This was Xiao Chen's own myth. The myriad heaven divine fist sang of the ancient deity sovereigns of the deity race. Xiao Chen was not a member of the deity race and did not believe in gods. If one's heart was not sincere enough, logically speaking, one would not be able to practice the myriad heaven divine fist. However, Xiao Chen blazed a different path, creating his own myth and being loyal only to himself. He did not believe in gods and only believed in himself. Who was the myth? He was the myth. Xiao Chen continuously poured such thoughts into his heart like he was hypnotizing himself. The magic energy in his sea of consciousness drained like spring water. As the magic energy drained, the deity statue behind Xiao Chen grew increasingly denser. Its figure became more realistic, and divine might gathered in its eyes. Bang! With a boom, the deity statue behind Xiao Chen grew incredibly huge. It was now 100 meters tall, like a small mountain. Finally, a trace of divine might gathered. Not a single tree remained in the forest. Under the sweep of the divine might, it turned into nothing in less than 1 breath. Xiao Chen's expression turned solemn. His face looked like it was carved, dignified and holy. Praises came from the air. With a thought, Xiao Chen raised his hand and slapped the air in front of him. The deity statue behind Xiao Chen stretched out its hand and slapped the air in front of it. A huge hand that covered the sky formed. This palm covered a distance of 25 kilometers. The golden light that shot out in all directions immediately illuminated the entire night sky. This palm strike seemed to make the distant sky sink by half a meter. The flat ground caved in deeply. Shaochen silently circulated his energy and withdrew this move. The deity statue slowly faded away. Then, Shaochen closed his eyes and entered deep thought. Just relying on Shaochen's magic energy to condense divine might was insufficient. If Shaochen could be like those deities of the deity race, forging deity statues in the deity domain and the lower realms, he could build temples for the people to worship and provide the power of faith. In that case, the might of this eternal myth could double. Following that, Shaochen started to materialize Dusk of Deities. This move was even more mighty, and the state it contained was even vaster and vaster. Cultivators of the deity race without strong mental energy would not be able to practice it. Normally, only those who reached the level of the blue-robed emperor were qualified to practice these two moves. Of course, this was just the qualification. Whether one could successfully practice it still required extremely high comprehension ability and a strong physical body. There was a huge difference between Dusk of Deities and Eternal Myth. Dusk of Deities did not need to condense divine might. The state that Shaochen needed to materialize was that of the destruction of the ancient divine kingdom, the arrival of the end of the world, the end of the myth, the fall of the gods, and the fall of prosperity. Chapter 983. From a certain point of view, this was closely related to Diwuk's split-second initial awareness. Split-second initial awareness represented the beginning of glory. That first brilliant light illuminated the darkness. The dusk of gods represented the decline of glory, the end of a legend. In that instant, the blood-stained setting sun was the final, sorrowful light of dusk before darkness descended. Shaochen was not in a rush to test it out. He sat cross-legged on the ground. First, the scene of Diwuk executing split-second initial awareness appeared in his mind. Following that, the scene of Diwuk summoning the divine kingdom image appeared. Then, the scene of the 12 keepers working together to summon the divine kingdom image appeared. All sorts of scenes appeared in his mind. If there were any missing parts, Shaochen would fill in the gaps. After sitting there for 6 hours, Shaochen opened his eyes. A bright light flashed in his eyes. Without getting up, he stretched out his hand and pointed forward. Late at night, the pitch-black night immediately turned into a blood-stained canvas. A dispirited setting sun hung in the distant sky. Strands of beautiful, blood-red fiery light fell to the ground like a meteor shower. Every meteor was a fallen deity. Mournful music rang out in the gloomy sky, filling the entire world with a solemn and stirring atmosphere. Bang! A strand of scarlet light shot out of Shaochen's fingertip and instantly tore through 5 kilometers. It looked like a waterfall in the sky, lingering for a long time. With a casual wave of his hand, all sorts of mysterious phenomena vanished. Night fell once more. The setting sun was gone, and the scarlet light no longer appeared. Only the scarlet waterfall that Shaochen executed in the sky did not scatter. Its might still lingered, and an apocalyptic aura spread out. Everywhere the waterfall passed, all the birds and beasts within 5 kilometers fled in panic. Shaochen slowly stood up and patted the dust off his body. Then, he muttered, "This is still not enough. If I can see a deity of the deity domain fall with my own eyes, I can better materialize this solemn state. Or, I can find one of the 7 thrones, the despair throne, to strengthen the power of this move." In the blink of an eye, the corners of Shaochen's mouth curled up slightly. He smiled and said, "Having flaws means that there is room for improvement. Right now, the power of this move is basically sufficient." The myriad heaven divine fist had one last move left, the burial of deities. Compared to dusk and finality, it was an even colder and more profound state. It was the final sentence of a glorious legend. However, Shaochen did not dare to test this move rashly. He faintly felt that there was something deeper to this move. At this moment, the myriad heaven divine fist that Shaochen comprehended had already broken away from the introduction on the surface. He had a more complete understanding of it. Many things and details that the God Clan's experts couldn't see, he had completed them and even added some of his own things. By relying on the large amount of divine liquid essence absorbed from the heavenly dew divine spring, Xiao Chen's originally strong comprehension ability had already reached an unimaginable level. For 3 days, Xiao Chen stayed here, repeatedly practicing these 2 moves. Although Xiao Chen did not make any major breakthroughs, he became much more familiar with executing the moves. At the very least, he could execute them with a thought. With some control, he could control the timing of his attacks, drawing them back and forth as he pleased. When the appointed time with Ying Qiong arrived, Xiao Chen unfurled the freedom wings and executed the magic skill, so close yet worlds apart a few times. Then, he rushed back to the city in the time it took to brew a pot of tea. Inside the inn, Xiao Chen sat down and drank his tea leisurely, quietly waiting for Ying Qiong to arrive. Xiao Chen felt very confident in Ying Qiong's ability to handle matters. Since the other party said that he could obtain a large number of secret treasures containing dragon souls, he would definitely be able to obtain them. Young master, someone sent a letter to this inn 3 days ago. When the waiter saw Xiao Chen arrive, he immediately came over happily. A letter? Who sent it? Xiao Chen put down his teacup and tossed a black astral coin to the waiter. Then, he took out the letter and did not rush to read its contents. Instead, he looked at the signature. Senior sister, from Shui Lingling, Xiao Chen read softly. Then, he opened the letter and read it carefully. After a while, Xiao Chen put down the letter. His expression appeared somewhat unsightly. Xiao Chen picked up the teacup and took a sip. A bitter taste lingered on his tongue. Ha! Young Master Xiao rarely shows such an expression. Did something happen? Ying Qiong arrived with a smile on her face. Without saying anything, Xiao Chen pushed the letter back to the other party. After Ying Qiong read it, her originally smiling face turned extremely angry. How can they do this? This is too much. Shui Lingling's letter was announced to the world in Bushan Palace. 2 months later, Xiao Hoju would hold his king conferral ceremony in White Emperor City. He would be conferred the White Tiger King, but he did not mention Xiao Chen at all. Ying Qiong could not help feeling angry. This was originally Xiao Chen's king conferral ceremony, but the 3 holy masters' ceremony dragged on for half a year. By the time Xiao Hoju was conferred king, Xiao Chen had only become a foil. At the end of the letter, Shui Lingling expressed some worry. The 3 holy masters' place seemed to have connections with the 3 sovereign noble clans of the human race, the Jiang clan, the Yan clan, and the Lin clan. They would make a move against Xiao Chen during the final period, preventing him from appearing at the king conferral ceremony. I'll send someone to escort you back. Ying Qiong also expressed his worry. If Xiao Chen missed the king conferral ceremony, it would be equivalent to him giving up. It would be very difficult for him to be conferred the title of Blue Dragon King in the future. Xiao Chen waved his hand and said, "There's no need. Give me the secret treasures containing the dragon soul first." The Haotian emperor had said that within 3 years, the blue-robed emperor would not make a move against Xiao Chen. This was the rule between major characters. This was a promise that Ying Zongzong had made to Xiao Chen from behind. It held great weight. Without this promise, without Ying Zongtian, who had expressed his stance long ago, Xiao Chen's path would be even more difficult than it was now. Since the blue-robed emperor could not make a move, Xiao Chen had nothing to fear. If he could not get past this hurdle, he would not have the face to participate in the king conferral ceremony. Ying Qiong gave Xiao Chen a somewhat reproachful look. Then, he followed Xiao Chen's instructions and took out the secret treasures containing the dragon soul one by one. Aside from a few complete sage-grade secret treasures, all the king-grade secret treasures were fragments, not a single one was complete. Most of the secret treasures were damaged beyond recognition, far inferior to the half of the flood dragon scissors that Xiao Chen obtained. Seeing Xiao Chen carefully look through every secret treasure containing the dragon soul, Ying Qiong asked somewhat nervously, "How is it? Are these enough?" In Ying Qiong's eyes, these secret treasures were basically a pile of trash. At most, the materials had some value. In the eyes of others, they were not worth mentioning. Aside from specialized blacksmiths, no cultivator would buy these things. Xiao Chen raised his head and said, "Not bad. Many thanks. There should be more than this, right?" Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Ying Qiong's somewhat worried expression vanished. He smiled and said, "There are still some left, but not much. You have not finished spending your 30 million black astral coins. In that case, it should not be a problem to increase his strength by 2 dragon force. After all, the materials of these secret treasures could not compare to the flood dragon scissors, which was once an immortal equipment. The dragon's soul was also not as strong as the flood dragon spirit." Xiao Chen had not finished spending his 30 million black astral coins. As Xiao Chen had expected, secret treasures containing dragon souls were not easy to find, even if they were fragments. 3 days was indeed rather short. It was already very impressive that Ying Qiong could help Xiao Chen to this extent. If Xiao Chen had to search for them himself, he would not even be able to find half of them in 3 days. Ying Qiong stretched out his hand and tossed over a spatial ring. "I don't want your 30 million black astral coins. Most of these are discarded items piled up in the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion's warehouse. There is basically no use for them." Xiao Chen received the spatial ring. However, he did not show much joy on his face. Even the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion could only obtain a few fragments of secret treasures containing dragon souls. In that case, if Xiao Chen wanted to gather 10 dragon force and cultivate the blue dragon body nourishing art, where should he go to find these secret treasures containing dragon souls? Ying Qiong seemed to have noticed Xiao Chen's doubts. He said, "As the saying goes, dragons hide in the depths. Dragons hide in the depths of the 9 abysses. There are more secret treasures containing dragon souls in the heavenly starry ocean." The heavenly starry ocean was a vast and boundless place filled with islands, sects, and countless experts. To many of the cultivators of the Kunlun realm, it was a mysterious place. "It looks like I really have to make a trip to the heavenly starry ocean in the future," Xiao Chen thought to himself. The saying, "dragons hide in the depths," is not wrong. After bidding farewell to Ying Qiong, Xiao Chen brought the secret treasures containing dragon souls to the guest room. Not wasting any time, he immediately circulated the blue dragon body nourishing art to consume these secret treasure fragments. There were too many of them. Xiao Chen spent an entire day before he finished consuming them all. Just as he had expected, this casual strike added 2 dragons' strength to the foundation of 3 dragons' strength. Collecting secret treasures containing dragon souls was indeed a shortcut for cultivating the blue dragon body nourishing art. Xiao Chen stood up and checked his strength. Then, he revealed a satisfied expression. With 5 dragon force in a casual strike, he could barely exchange moves with a great grandmaster level martial sage without using a martial technique. By circulating deities descending, he could fight a great grandmaster level martial sage without needing to multiply his combat prowess tenfold, saving a lot of energy. Xiao Chen took out the wooden box containing the 10,000-year-old flame crystal again. Then, he revealed a grave expression as he muttered to himself, "Ao Jiao should be back by now, right? Given Situ Leihong's abilities, 4 days should be more than enough to revive Ao Jiao. Let's go." Not suppressing the anticipation in his heart, Xiao Chen leaped out of the window and executed the Freedom Wings so close yet worlds apart magic skill, flying towards Sword Forging Peak. With each step, Xiao Chen traveled 50 kilometers. Now, he was close to 1,000 kilometers. After taking 10 odd steps, Sword Forging Peak came into view. Xiao Chen rushed up the mountain. His hurried pace stunned the many swordsmen of Sword Forging Peak. Xiao Chen had entered Sword Forging Peak many times. The swordsmen who came here all saw Xiao Chen remain calm and collected. Even when facing the mocking of a great grandmaster level martial sage, Xiao Chen did not get angry. At the very least, he did not show it on the surface. His pace had never been so hurried. When the swordsmen looked at Xiao Chen's expression, they could easily capture a trace of nervousness. What exactly happened? Why is the white-robed Xiao Chen in such a rush? Could it be that he is under too much pressure from the upcoming duel? I heard that when Xiren is in the limelight this time. Several older generation great-grandmaster level martial sages fell to his saber. The younger generation bladesmen are indeed at their peak in the past few years. Unfortunately, although there are many outstanding talents of the sword Dao, there are no peak experts who can match them aside from Yan Shisan, whose whereabouts are unknown. The rarely seen nervousness on Xiao Chen's face and his hurried expression confused the swordsmen, causing them to speculate. Chapter 984. After entering the mountain manor, the bellboy led Xiao Chen to Situ Leihong, who had a calm expression as he hugged the lunar shadow saber and drank tea. Ha! Little friend Xiao Chen is here. What's wrong? You feel that you cannot defeat Wen Ziren, so you want to take the saber back in advance? I'll have to disappoint you. Without the 10,000-year-old flame crystal, I will not give you this saber. Situ Leihong smiled, but his tone did not change at all. Before Situ Leihong finished speaking, the lunar shadow saber in his embrace started trembling intensely. The force far surpassed Situ Leihong's expectations. Whoosh! The saber shot out. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and caught the flying lunar shadow saber. Then, he closed his eyes and felt it. He saw a familiar figure within the lunar shadow saber. This person's eyes were tightly shut as she floated on the lake. At first, Xiao Chen rejoiced. However, he called out in his heart. However, Ao Jiao did not open her eyes. He could not help but ask anxiously, "Senior, what's going on?" Situ Leihong grabbed with a flip of his hand, and a strong suction pulled the lunar shadow saber back into his grasp. Only then did he reveal a satisfied expression. Bang! However, in less than a second, the lunar shadow saber struggled free again and flew towards Xiao Chen. Damn! Situ Leihong cursed without the air of a grandmaster. Is this fellow that good? This old man went through a lot of trouble to save you. After cursing, Situ Leihong saw the worried expression on Xiao Chen's face. He smiled and said, "Brat, don't be unaware of your blessings. This is her fortuitous encounter. When she wakes up, this saber of yours will have a chance of ranking high on the divine weapon ranking." When Xiao Chen heard that, he immediately revealed an irrepressible expression of joy. He did not care whether he could rank high on the divine weapon ranking or not. As long as Ao Jiao really came back to life, everything would be fine. Senior Situ, I will never forget this great kindness. Xiao Chen knelt on one knee and performed a cupped fist salute to Situ Leihong. A man would not kneel even if he had money. He would kneel to the heavens, the earth, and his parents. Other than that, even if you beat him to death, Xiao Chen would never kneel to a third person. However, no matter what, Situ Leihong could accept Xiao Chen's kneel, could accept Xiao Chen's bow for Ao Jiao. Situ Leihong's smiling face was embarrassed by Xiao Chen's kneeling. With a wave of his hand, he helped Xiao Chen up. He said helplessly, "You brat, you're really unable to continue." Situ Kai sighed and said, "I have seen countless people in my life. You are the only one who dares to be so stubborn over a saber. Take the saber. You can use it without worry now. With the help of this saber, your chances of victory in the fight with Wen Ziren will increase by 20%. Xiao Chen thought of something and handed the wooden box containing the 10,000-year-old flame crystal to Situ. When Situ Leihong opened the wooden box and took a look, his expression changed slightly. He smiled and said, "This Wu Xiaoyan's disciple is an interesting person. This battle is going to be interesting. Let's go, let's go. There's no need to be pretentious." Suddenly, Situ Leihong glanced around and saw Xiao Chen preparing to draw his saber in the hall. Startled, he put down the 10,000-year-old flame crystal and shouted, "Don't move!" Boom. Before Situ Leihong finished speaking, he saw a flash of light. The saber light shattered the entire hall in one breath of time. A strand of saber light soared into the clouds within the mountain manor, tearing through 50 kilometers of clouds and piercing into the sky. The long line of swordsmen at Sword Forging Peak looked up in shock, not understanding what was going on. The swords in the hands of several swordsmen rang out as they broke. The entire Sword Forging Peak turned chaotic. Outside the famous heavenly saber city of the profound domain, there was a lake called Nine Dragons Lake. The lake water was clear and boundlessly vast. When one looked into the distance, they could not see the end of the fog. There were 9 mountain peaks around the lake. They were very tall and looked like huge dragons soaring into the clouds. The mountain peaks looked like dragons. However, the dragons that each mountain peak looked like were different. They all had very distinct characteristics. According to rumor, these 9 mountain peaks were formed by the divine dragons of the immortal epoch. In the distant past, someone once heard the mountains roar like a dragon roar, stirring and mournful. This made the legend of the mountain peaks being formed by the divine dragons seem somewhat ethereal. The mountain peaks were very tough, able to withstand a strike from the blue-robed emperor without collapsing. Each mountain peak suppressed a peak spirit vein. Back then, when the sword and saber clashed, before the saber sovereign Wu Shaotian and the sword sovereign Lu Xiaoyun advanced to martial emperor, they fought 9 times on this 9 Dragons Lake. They had fought 9 times on the 9 Dragons Lake, and all 9 times they had ended in a draw. They had become lifelong rivals. The last time the two fought on 9 Dragons Lake, they had advanced to the blue-robed emperor at that time. They each represented the peak-rising talents of the sword and saber factions of the profound domain. That battle was very soul-stirring and exciting. Even after thousands of years, it was still a well-known story, praised by everyone. The result of the battle was still a draw, but at the end of the battle. However, at the end of the battle, the two used their comprehensions to break through the bottleneck of Emperor Wu at the same time, both becoming emperors. In the sky, there were 2 descending roads of emperor, and 2 people were running together. At the same time, they stepped onto the peak and pushed open their respective doors to Emperor Wu, stepping onto the Great Tao. It was also that battle that caused the originally unknown 9 Dragon Lake to become the famous holy land of duels in the Xian region. The standards were extremely high. Later, because of the frequent duels, Heavenly Saber City set a rule that only blue-robed emperor-level existences could duel here. Perhaps there really was a mysterious spiritual energy in this place. Many years later, a few more people advanced to martial emperor after dueling here, making 9 Dragons Lake even more famous. However, the grand feat of the sword sovereign Lu Xiaoyun and the saber sovereign Wu Shaotian advancing to martial emperor together never happened again. Today, another duel would take place at 9 Dragons Lake, opening the door for 2 bladesmen of the younger generation. Neither side of the duel was as strong as the blue-robed emperor. However, they still allowed the duel to take place at 9 Dragons Lake. The reason was none other than the 2 people's names. One was the white-robed Shao Chen, and the other was the saber sovereign's disciple, Wen Ziren. At this moment, countless large ships and flying spirit beasts floated above the white clouds outside the mountain peak. Even more cultivators stood there. All of them looked into the distance, towards the center of 9 Dragons Lake. A blue-clad cultivator sat cross-legged in the center of the lake. This youth had delicate features and looked spotless. He exuded an ethereal air from head to toe. A long saber floated quietly on the water's surface beside the youth's left hand. Simple and unadorned patterns were carved on the saber's scabbard. The complicated patterns gave off an ancient aura. An ancient word was carved on both sides of the saber's hilt, Luo River. Around the blue-clad youth were a few water people the size of a cultivator. They were currently fighting each other, practicing some kind of profound saber technique. While the blue-clad youth looked like he was resting, in reality, he did not relax at all. He made full use of every spare moment to cultivate. Several people on the ship above the clouds would occasionally turn their heads to look into the distance. Their expressions of anticipation contained some excitement and nervousness. However, every time they turned their heads back, they were disappointed. As time passed, they could not help feeling somewhat anxious. Strange, when Ziren arrived early in the morning. Why is there no sign of Shao Chen yet? It is almost noon already. This is too worrying. Naturally, the cultivators who rushed over after hearing the news were here to watch the duel between Shao Chen and Wen Ziren. However, no one showed up after so long. It was hard to avoid feeling anxious. Could it be that the recent rumors are right? The saber in Xiao Chen's hand is just a decoration, completely crippled. The rumors have been spreading rather ferociously recently. I heard that Xiao Chen was severely injured in the 9 layers of purgatory and has been suppressing his injuries, unable to fight for long. I even heard that after Xiao Chen defeated Ouyang Long in 3 moves on Sword Forging Peak, he immediately vomited 3 liters of blood. I don't know who started the bet recently, but the payout for Xiao Chen is already 1-3. In the end, all the bets are on Wen Xiren. Ha! It looks like something is indeed wrong. Fortunately, I resisted the temptation and bet all 500,000 black astral coins on Wen Xiren. Ha ha ha. Me too. I bet half of my 1 million black astral coins on Wen Xiren. No matter what, Wen Xiren's strength has always been stable. His performance in this saber school ranking competition spoke for itself. His chances of victory are at least 50%. As for Xiao Chen, it is hard to say. When bets were placed for duels, especially for famous ones, there would normally be people opening bets. This was not a rare thing in the Kunlun realm. At this moment, the sun was high in the sky. Noon was about to pass, but there was still no sign of Xiao Chen. Everyone could not help feeling suspicious. Above the white clouds, on the deck of the profound domains in Clan's warship, Kim Tae-ho continuously calculated the bets he had received since the bets opened. Lord Jiu stood at the side, clearly excited. The amount of bets was unexpectedly large. If the results were as Fatso said, they would have made a huge profit this time. However, if they lost, not only would they have to pay back all the astral coins they obtained from selling the illegal goods, but they would also have to work for the Ying clan for the rest of their lives to repay the debt. The two of them were not famous. Naturally, they had to find someone to vouch for them. Kim Tae-ho had a glib tongue, getting Ying Cheong to vouch for them. Hence, the bets opened smoothly. Lord Jiu said nervously, "Why does this Lord Jiu feel a little nervous? Fatso, aren't you going overboard with this rumor? What if Xiao Chen really loses?" Kim Tae-ho shouted, "How can that be? 3 days ago, a strand of saber chi destroyed most of the manor on Sword Forging Peak. Others might not know, but this fat lord is absolutely certain that the lunar shadow saber has completely recovered." However, Ying Cheong, who was at the side, smiled softly and said, "That is hard to say. Even if the lunar shadow saber is unsheathed and Xiao Chen's strength increases significantly, Wen Xiren's river water saber is not something to be trifled with. The saber sovereign Wu Xiaotian put in a lot of effort to enter the divine weapon ranking in the future for the sake of this river water saber." Kim Tae-ho said embarrassedly, "Little sister, don't scare this fat lord. If this fat lord loses, the one who will suffer the greatest loss will be you." A crafty look flashed in Ying Cheong's eyes as she sized up Kim Tae-ho. Then, she nodded and smiled. "Don't worry. This lady naturally has a way to recoup my losses from you. You better pray to God and Buddha to protect yourself." "What are you trying to do?" "This fat lord is not selling his body," Kim Tae-ho said as he quickly took a few steps back, feeling flustered from Ying Cheong's gaze. Ying Cheong could not help laughing. She burst out in laughter and said, "Dream on. With all that fat on your body, how much is 1 kilogram? Ka! Ka! Ka!" The water figures materializing mysterious martial techniques around the blue-robed bladesman when Xiren suddenly shattered, turning into droplets of rain falling from the sky. Such a change instantly attracted everyone's attention. When Xiren opened his eyes and grasped the river water saber beside him. Then, he slowly stood up and stared at the empty water in front. Chapter 985. He was as gentle as water as he stood quietly on the water. His facial features were not considered handsome, but his sharpness was withdrawn. It was like he had merged with the entire Nine Dragons Lake. The Tao was natural, and the saber was like the Tao. He was like a treasured saber that drifted with the waves. Bang! The space in front folded up. The mountains and rivers turned hazy and indistinct. A white figure took a step forward in an extremely distant place. In the next moment, he stood on the lake, 1 kilometer away from Wenziren. Ing Qiong's gaze immediately shifted over, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Xiao Chen is here. He finally came. If he had come any later, the sun would have set. Ha! Right now, our profound domain's bladesmen firmly suppress the swordsmen. Today, the battle between two peak-rising talents will definitely be a feast for the eyes. Xiao Chen's appearance allowed everyone to heave a sigh of relief. Otherwise, the long-awaited duel would be ruined. Everyone would feel that it was a pity. Sorry for the delay, so I came late, Xiao Chen said apologetically as he performed a cupped fist salute after sizing up Wenziren. It is not too late to come before the sun sets. How about competing with the saber first? Wenziren's aura was like water, but his character was extremely decisive. He did not hesitate at all. The moment he arrived, he immediately prepared for the duel. From a certain point of view, Wenziren was very similar to Xiao Chen. They were both people who did not like to speak nonsense. Xiao Chen nodded to indicate that he had no objections. Then, the two's right hands silently grasped their saber hilts at the same time. At this moment, the two's auras suddenly changed. In that instant, all of their sharpness exploded out. Thousands of sabers clashed, resounding over the vast lake, clanging endlessly. Thousands upon thousands of water pillars containing boundless saber intent soared into the sky above the lake, soaring into the clouds. A resplendent light as bright as the sun shone. The lunar shadow soared and the river water left the two's right hands at the same time, shooting forward like meteors. Just like that, the atmosphere of a great battle suddenly descended. No one expected the two to be so decisive, starting the duel without saying anything. What was a duel of sabers? Bladesmen were no stranger to this. Simply put, it was drawing one's saber in an instant. The moment they clashed in midair, whoever's saber was knocked away would be the loser. This seemingly simple action contained too many factors: aura, cultivation, will, saber soul, the angle at which the saber was drawn, the control of the environment, and everyone's comprehension of saber techniques. The slightest mistake would put him at a disadvantage in the saber competition. In addition to the above, there was another very important factor, which was the saber itself. When an ordinary saber clashed with a high-grade famed saber, it went without saying who had the upper hand. In a situation where both sides had similar talents, the saber itself was the deciding factor in a saber duel. Seeing Xiao Chen agree to Wenziren's request without hesitation, the many cultivators watching outside the white clouds were all startled. Who in the profound domain did not know that Wenziren's river water saber was personally forged by the saber sovereign, Wu Xiaotian? The materials used and the effort put in were all for the divine weapon ranking. Although it was only a sub-divine weapon now, as long as it advanced to a divine weapon, it would charge into the divine weapon ranking. It would become one of the 10 great divine weapons. The divine might it contained rivaled that of a primordial emperor treasure. The famed river water saber was famous everywhere. In the past few years, this saber had chopped down countless older generation cultivators. Who knew how many treasures had been chopped in half by the river water saber? During the saber school ranking competition, Wenziren had used this saber to chop down 8 great grandmaster-level martial sages, ranking within the top 10 of the saber school ranking. This had also pushed the prestige of this saber to the peak. This Xiao Chen is too arrogant. To think that he really dares to compete with Wenziren. How unfortunate. Originally, I was looking forward to this battle. Now, there is nothing to see. If his saber is not good, he could have just said so. Why the need to be stubborn? Given Wenziren's character, he will definitely give up on competing with the saber. Both sides will fight with sabers of the same quality. With that, he still wants to participate in the king conferral ceremony. I think he should stop embarrassing himself. Ha! Who cares? I bet on Wenziren winning. That's true. Rumors spread everywhere. Many bladesmen expressed that it was a pity. These people could not be blamed for having such one-sided discussions. This was because the fame of the river water saber had flourished in the profound domain in the past few years. Lord Jiu's ears were very sharp. When he heard the discussions around, he could not help but feel even more uncertain. Fatso, are your words accurate or not? At this moment, Kim Tae-ho felt uncertain as well. He could not help but look at Ing Cheong. Ing Cheong's expression turned grave as he muttered to himself, "This is rather strange." Given Wen Xiren's character, he would not ask to compete with his saber despite knowing that his saber is better. What's going on? When Kim Tae-ho heard that, he immediately showed a bitter expression. It's over. This fat lord is really going to fail this time. Regardless of what the others were discussing, the lunar shadow saber above the lake, the lunar shadow saber gave off a resplendent purple light. Electricity gathered and spun in the air, creating strands of flickering electricity. This caused the sky to turn dark for some reason. When Xiao Chen looked up, thunderclouds spread out in the sky as the lunar shadow saber danced. The surging thunderclouds were like true dragons swimming with the saber, breathing and swallowing the clouds. The wind, clouds, thunder, and lightning in the surroundings all moved with it. When Xiao Chen swung his saber, the world moved. Xiao Chen grasped the essence of the saber perfectly. However, the more this was so, the more the spectating cultivators felt it was a pity. Such exquisite saber skills were sufficient to prove that Xiao Chen lived up to his reputation. However, the saber in his hand was not up to par. He would definitely lose if he competed with the saber. Several people even sighed softly. It was not for anything else but because there would be one less exciting battle between bladesmen. This might become a regret of their lives. On the other side, Wen Xiren's saber was as gentle as water. It had a gentle aura, like flowing water. However, as Wen Xiren drew his saber, the aura of this saber also changed in an instant. The roar of a mountain torrent erupted between the heavens and the earth, covering the surroundings and competing with the sound of thunder. The saber spun endlessly. Watery clouds covered the sky, and a heavy downpour fell. The rainwater was like a saber. When it landed on the water, it sounded like many treasured sabers humming and trembling. The falling rainwater turned into thousands of strands hidden at the bottom of the lake. As the undercurrents surged, the humming of the saber sounded like a powerful dragon roar, lingering on endlessly. It resonated with the watery clouds in the sky, resisting the 50 kilometers of thunderclouds bearing fangs and claws together. The famed saber, the river water, fell into the water like a saber. Amid the cool breeze and drizzle, the blue-robed Wen Xiren stood on the surface of the lake, looking spotless. As he did so, a dragon roar sounded. Time seemed to stop on this Nine Dragons Lake. Xiao Chen and Wen Xiren stood calmly on the water. The horrifying mysterious phenomenon in the surroundings did not affect them at all. It was like the hearts of bladesmen, absolutely calm and rational. Nothing could disturb them. As the two spinning sabers approached each other, several of the spectating cultivators in the sky could not help but close their eyes, unwilling to watch. The result was set from the very start. Without a divine weapon, what saber in the world could defeat the famed river water saber in a competition of sabers? Ing Cheong's heart could not help pounding heavily. Anxiety appeared in his eyes as he muttered to himself, "This idiot. That is the famed river water saber, a treasure saber that the saber sovereign Wu Xiaotian forged for the sake of breaking into the divine weapon ranking. Isn't he very smart all along? Why did he agree to compete with the saber without thinking?" Of course, time would not really stop. However, the two sabers storing up power gave others the misconception that time had slowed down. What would come would come. The instant the two sabers were about to clash, they suddenly accelerated. They were as fast as a glimpse, surpassing the speed of most cultivators' eyes. Then, they quickly clashed. Before everyone could understand what was going on, they heard a crisp sound coming from the center of the lake. Where the two sabers clashed, a light encased them. Electricity flickered as two dragons clashed. The water spout soared into the sky and instantly swept up the two sabers, turning the chaotic situation even more chaotic. For a moment, no one could see what was going on. Thunderclouds and water clouds clashed in the sky. Loud sounds reverberated in all directions. Layers of clouds scattered like the sky was shattering, looking exceptionally scary. The undercurrent of the dragon roars on the surface of the lake under when Xiren's feet slowly faded. Ripples spread across the surface of the lake, and waves surged wildly. When Xiren moved up and down with the waves. At some point in time, blood leaked out of a corner of his lips. What's going on? When everyone saw the blood at the corner of when Xiren's lips and then looked at the calm white-robed Xiao Chen, they suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, at the place where the two sabers clashed, light flashed, and dragon roars rang out endlessly. No one could see the result clearly. Someone whispered, the instant the two sabers clashed, I seemed to hear the sound of a saber breaking. Could it be that someone's saber broke? That should be Xiao Chen's saber, the famed river water saber. If a divine weapon does not appear, no saber can break it. It looks like after Xiao Chen's saber broke, when Xiren was significantly injured as well. That makes sense. How unfortunate. This is truly unfortunate. Although I do not want to say it, white-robed Xiao Chen lost unjustly. No one believed that the river water saber could break. Since a saber broke, it had to be Xiao Chen's saber. Kim Tae-ho looked around and laughed loudly. He fanned himself and said, Little sister Ing Cheong, this fat lord is going to relieve himself. My stomach is disappointing. Sensing that something was wrong, Fatso quickly tried to flee. However, he had only taken one step when a few Ing clan cultivators blocked his way with murderous expressions. Bang! Lord Jiu, who had slipped out earlier, was tossed back to the deck. He had an awkward smile on his face. When Fatso saw the situation, he immediately shut his mouth and squatted on the ground with a bitter expression. If one did not know better, one would think that he was constipated. Ing Cheong ignored these two clowns. Her pretty face was filled with uncertainty, disappointment, and worry. Bang! The chaotic scene in the center of the lake slowly scattered. The waterspout fell back to the surface, and the thunderclouds and watery clouds in the sky also vanished. A beam of sunlight descended, and a bright light shone. Under the blazing sun, the surface of the lake shimmered, making it look very bright. After everything calmed down, only a saber remained hovering above the lake. The saber stood proudly facing the blazing sun, flickering with a dazzling light. Chapter 986. That's not right. That is not Luo water. That is the lunar shadow saber. Suddenly, someone's expression changed greatly. He opened his mouth and cried out in shock, as if he had seen the most unreasonable thing in the world. An uproar immediately spread among all the spectating martial artists. What happened? Where is Wen Xiren's saber? Impossible, this is impossible, it must be an illusion. However, as Wen Xiren stretched out his hand to the bottom of the lake, he grabbed the two halves of the river water saber. An unacceptable fact had happened just like that. Countless sabers broke. The famed Luo River, which carried the saber sovereign Wu Xiaotian's hopes, broke. No one had expected that the result would be like this. It was the famed saber Luo Shui that was broken. As for the saber that belonged to Xiao Chen, it still stood proudly in the air, shining with a dazzling brilliance. The surroundings were silent for a long time. On the Ying family's battleship, Kim Tae-ho's jaw dropped. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and smiled. You almost scared this Lord Fatty to death. I really can't open this board so carelessly in the future. The solemn expression on Ing Cheong's face slowly relaxed, and a knowing smile appeared on his face. On Nine Dragons Lake, when Xiren held the broken saber. His expression was somewhat shocked, but he did not feel too surprised. When Xiren smiled faintly and put away the broken saber. Then, he wiped off the blood at the corner of his lips and looked at Xiao Chen. I heard from Master 3 days ago that you obtained a good saber at Sword Forging Manor. However, I did not expect it to be so strong. What is the name of this saber? Lunar Shadow. Xiaochen waved his hand and returned his saber to its sheath, answering honestly. Wen Xiren muttered to himself for a while. Then, he raised his head and smiled. Lunar Shadow, that is a pretty good name. I will remember it. Let's continue the duel. Upon hearing Wen Xiren's words, the surrounding cultivators frowned slightly. Wen Xiren's saber was already broken. Why did he still want to compete? Xiaochen withdrew his palm and put away the Lunar Shadow saber. He nodded and said, I will not use a saber in this battle. You can choose another saber. Xiaochen cultivated the flawless saber Dao. Having a saber in his hand was just icing on the cake. It wouldn't affect his combat strength, but it was different for the other party. When Xiren smiled and said, there is no need to choose a saber. The Luo water art that I cultivate has a great advantage in this 9 Dragons Lake. I have long heard of the flawless saber Dao. Let me see how extraordinary the saber Dao that made the ancient people show their sages is. Xiaochen was not a stubborn and inflexible person. He could tell that Wen Xiren had already accepted the outcome of this battle. What he wanted was nothing more than to find an opponent who was on par with him so that he could make a breakthrough in this battle. Since that was the case, then he would have nothing to worry about and fight to his heart's content. The two of them looked at each other and saw the raging fighting spirit in each other's eyes. The calm lake water surged with undercurrents. It was as if a great dragon hidden in the depths of the lake had opened its eyes and was accumulating power to soar into the sky. Feeling this atmosphere, the many cultivators on the warship and spirit birds all shut their mouths, waiting for an exciting battle to begin. Unexpectedly, the one to make the first move was Wen Xiren, who had broken his saber. When Wen Xiren smashed his palm on the water, there was a loud boom. 9 huge 3-kilometer-tall waves surged out in all directions. The waves surged forward like huge dragons. 9 dragons roared ferociously, giving off a strong aura that could swallow up the world. In an instant, they buried Xiaochen within them. Xiaochen's gaze sank. The 9 huge dragon-like waves surged over. Each of them contained at least 10,000 tons of force. When they merged, they could even crush a tall mountain. Most importantly, every one of the 1,000 zhang tall waves contained a peerless sharpness. That was Wen Xiren's great perfection saber soul, which perfectly merged with the will of water. Wen Xiren drove his peak strength with just a gentle palm strike. Even without a saber, Wen Xiren could not be underestimated. Many of the spectating cultivators were bladesmen. When they saw Wen Xiren's palm strike, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. If they faced this palm strike, they would most likely be crushed into meat paste on the spot, dying without a complete corpse. Wen Xiren threw a palm strike and muttered to himself, Xiaochen, this is just the beginning. Don't disappoint me. The waves formed the momentum of the 9 dragons. The instant they were about to merge, Xiaochen made his move. A saber light lit up on Xiaochen's body. His body became like a saber, his shoulders like a saber, and his hair like sabers. As his figure moved, he sent out 9 saber strikes. His shoulders, hair, palms, and other parts of his body clashed with the 9 waves. 9 explosions rang out. Outside 9 Dragons Lake, the 9 peaks trembled and gave off dragon roars, echoing for 50 kilometers around. As the sound waves spread out, the surrounding warships and spirit beasts seemed to be moved by a huge hand, flipping many of them over. Such a strange turn of events caused the remaining cultivators to feel fear in their hearts. They all rode on their warships and spirit beasts and retreated. Right after Wen Xiren broke the 9 waves, he used the many layers of water to charge over to Xiaochen in the blink of an eye. Bang! 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 Endless waves rose up on the 9 Dragons Lake. The two of them exchanged moves quickly, flying quickly over the vast lake. Wen Xiren used water as a saber. With a casual swing, the scattered lake water turned into boundless saber lights. With a thought, a wave containing strong force became the most ferocious saber technique. The sound of water surged endlessly. By relying on the terrain, Wen Xiren's aura actually surpassed that of Xiao Chen's. Even though Wen Xiren clearly did not have a saber in his hand, his aura flourished, each wave stronger than the one before. The River Water Incantation. I heard that the saber sovereign Wu Xiaotian found this cultivation technique in an ancient remnant. Wen Xiren truly lives up to his reputation as a genius. He probably practiced this ancient cultivation technique to great perfection, just one step short of consummation. I really did not expect that after losing the river water saber, Wen Xiren could still hold the upper hand. Wen Xiren's strength made everyone's eyes light up, causing many praises to ring out. Xiao Qin remained calm. Wen Xiren's cultivation was one cultivation grade higher than his. His comprehension of the water saber Dao had already reached an extremely deep level. Wen Xiren could turn water into a saber as he pleased, giving him a great advantage in this Nine Dragons Lake. If Xiao Qin did not use the lunar shadow saber, he would have a hard time dealing with such a person. Actually, the main problem was that Xiao Qin only used his saber techniques in this battle to show his respect. If he used the myriad Heaven Divine Fist, immortal arts, magic skills, and a strong physical body, he would be able to defeat Wen Xiren in 100 moves. If Xiao Qin wanted to defeat the bladeless Wen Xiren, he would only need 100 moves. However, Wen Xiren's saber was already broken in this battle. Victory was no longer Xiao Chen's goal. Dragons roared endlessly as the two in the lake fought an intense battle. Xiao Qin brought out his flawless saber Dao to its limits. His opponent's exquisite water saber Dao broadened his mind significantly. For example, the other party's killing move, Moon in Water, was a great eye-opener for Xiao Qin. After witnessing the moon in the water, Flawless Bright Moon experienced a qualitative improvement. Flawless Bright Moon, Flawless Four Seasons, and Subduing Dragon Profound Slash, the three strongest moves of his saber techniques, Xiao Qin executed them one after another. Relying on the vast Nine Dragons Lake, although Wen Xiren had a hard time receiving them, he managed to receive them one by one, preventing himself from collapsing on the spot. After 1,000 moves, both sides gained something. The victor was still undecided. However, both of them sat cross-legged on the lake, closing their eyes and thinking. On one side, it was drizzling. On the other, lightning occasionally flashed in the sky. Such a scene confused the other cultivators. This was clearly a duel. Why were both sides in such a rush to decide a victor? After a long time, Xiao Qin opened his eyes, and the light in his eyes became withdrawn. In this battle, Xiao Qin did not hold back at all in terms of saber techniques. He could be said to have met his match, fighting to his heart's content. This was like a great test, allowing Xiao Qin to gain a comprehensive understanding of his saber techniques. At this moment, as long as Xiao Qin willed it, he could easily cross the line between superior grade martial sage and grandmaster level martial sage, becoming a grandmaster level martial sage. After that, Wen Xiren opened his eyes and said calmly, "I lost this duel. Let's fight again at Nine Dragons Lake 3 years from now. The victor is not decided yet. Let's just treat it as a draw." Wen Xiren smiled faintly and said, "To me, victory or defeat is nothing. You still have tricks up your sleeves. How can I not tell? I believe that you will give everyone a shock at the king conferral ceremony 2 months from now." Xiao Qin was very relaxed as he chatted with Wen Xiren. The two just sat on the lake and chatted, discussing their views on each other's saber techniques. As they chatted and laughed, the two performed cupped fist salutes and said their goodbyes. "Should we enter Heavenly Saber City and rest for a while? There are many spectators with ulterior motives," Wen Xiren suggested as he looked into the distance. If the land of the three holy masters really reached an agreement with the three sovereign noble clans of the human race, then this duel between Xiao Qin and Wen Xiren would be an excellent opportunity for the other party to make a move. How could Xiao Qin not guess this? He had expected it long ago, so he did not fear these people. After entering Heavenly Saber City, Xiao Qin would have to come out sooner or later, so he rejected Wen Xiren's invitation. This duel ended with Wen Xiren taking the initiative to admit defeat. The spectators slowly scattered. This duel could not be considered startling. Aside from the initial exchange of sabers, which was very exciting and soul-stirring, the subsequent duel between the two was grand and shocking. However, neither side showed any intention of competing with the other. Rather than calling it a duel, it was more like an exchange of pointers between bladesmen. Both sides were evenly matched, testing each other's moves. There was no desire to win. All the bladesmen present were incredibly excited. As Xiao Qian and Wen Xiren exchanged moves, they merged the saber techniques and saber Dao that they had learned and comprehended. Each of them combined the saber arts and saber Dao that they had learned and comprehended. More or less, they all gained something from it. Xiao Qian gently floated up and arrived on the Ying clan's warship. On the bow, Kim Tae-ho and Lord Jiu were grinning from ear to ear. When they saw Xiao Qian board, they quickly went forward to greet him. "Can you lend this fat lord your Dragon's Gate's warship for a while?" Kim Tae-ho asked in anticipation as he rubbed his hands together. Lord Jiu, who was at the side, said, "Fatso won quite a lot from the opening of the bets. He is planning to reopen a merchant association without a warship or status." Xiao Qian smiled faintly and said, "Take it. I'll take some time to send a letter to Shui Lingling and get the Haotian sect to take care of your business. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come and look for me directly." Ying Qiong walked over slowly and said softly, "Hee hee. Big sister will invest the money you borrowed from me. Can I make it a big share?" When Kim Tae-ho heard this, he rejoiced and nodded continuously. With the support of the Haotian sect and the Ying clan, given Xiao Qian's means, it would be hard for this merchant association not to become big. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me. In less than 3 years, this fat lord will definitely achieve some results." After chatting for a while, Fatso stood up and took his leave. Lord Jiu quickly followed. After asking, Xiao Qian found out that Fatso had hired Lord Jiu to be his bodyguard. Chapter 987. When Xiao Qian heard this, his expression could not help but turn somewhat strange. He could not help but laugh to himself. Kim Tae-ho was really good at picking people to be his bodyguard. Lord Jiu might not be good at anything else, but when it came to escaping, even Xiao Qian had to admit that he was not as good as Lord Jiu. Ying Qiong waved his hand and dismissed everyone on the warship. Then, he asked seriously, "Xiao Qian, do you really not want me to send someone to escort you to the Tianwu Domain's central province?" The journey to the central province's Bushin Palace was very long. There were too many accidents and possibilities. Ying Qiong could not help but worry. Xiao Qian shook his head and said, "There's no need. This should be the final test the Haotian Emperor gave me. If he really wants to send me, he can tear space and send me there in an instant. I still have to walk this path myself." Seeing Xiao Qian's insistence, Ying Qiong sighed to himself. He knew that the other party would not change his mind. He said softly, "Since that is the case, I will not try to dissuade you. Remember, you must succeed in the king conferral ceremony. Many of the old people in the clan are watching you. If you fail, too much time has passed. Some promises might not be able to withstand the test of time." Xiao Qian's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely guessed what the other party meant. The Sky Dome Realms Ying clan must have been sent by the Kunlun Realms Ying clan to protect the Shao clan's descendant. From the looks of it, the Ying clan might be a contingency plan left behind by the Qing Emperor before he fell 10,000 years ago. However, whether Xiao Qian could help him or not would depend on his performance. "I will. From the moment I revealed my identity, the title of Blue Dragon King was destined to be mine." The Bushin Palace did not belong to one or a few people. It represented the alliance of the entire human race, ruling over the vast Tianwu domain. There were also the countless stars in the starry heavens. Such a rule had lasted since the ancient era until now. This rule was deeply ingrained in every human cultivator. The Bushin Palace was the most legitimate ruler of the human race. The title granted by Bushin Palace was very important. This was not just an empty reputation. It also represented a kind of luck, one that was recognized by all the human cultivators. The title of Blue Dragon King was not won by the Qing Emperor. Instead, it was left behind by the founder of the Dragon Gate, a sacred land that had disappeared. The Dragon Gate's existence could also be traced back to the ancient era, which was even older than the Qing Emperor. However, the Dragon Gate developed to a peak in the hands of the Qing Emperor. As a result, when people mentioned the Dragon Gate, they would refer to it as the Qing Emperor's Dragon Gate. Every generation's Dragon Gate master was the current generation's Blue Dragon King. This title was extremely important to Xiao Chen. Without this title, when they rebuilt the Dragon's Gate in the future, they would lose their status. They would not be recognized by the hundreds of millions of human cultivators. Without luck, they would not be able to rebuild the Dragon's Gate. Xiao Chen gently leaped off the warship and landed on the ground. Then, he raised his head and looked into the distance. Then, he started on this journey that he could only rely on himself to reach. As Xiao Chen traveled on a small mountain path, he was not in a rush. Instead, he continued to digest his gains from the battle with Wen Ziren. Flawless bright moon. Did the night or the moon come first? Was it the flawless night that made the moon flawless? Or was it the flawless bright moon that made the night perfect and flawless? Without the setting of the night, there would not be the radiance of the bright moon. After thinking for 3 days, Xiao Chen finally figured out the relationship between the two. Only the darkest night could bring out the most perfect moon. The peaceful days lasted for a month. Just as Xiao Chen was about to step out of the profound domain, a group of purple-clad people stopped him. These people were not the people of the Yan, Jiang, or Lin noble clans. They were all cultivators of the Purple Knight Sword sect. There were not many of them, only about 20. Every one of them was at least a martial sage. With Xiao Chen's current judgment, these people's cultivations could not be considered high. However, all of them gave off a sharp light. Without exception, these people were all swordsmen who comprehended sword intent. The person leading them was the great Grandmaster level martial sage Ouyang Long. Back at Sword Forging Peak, Xiao Chen had let Ouyang Long off. There was another person beside Ouyang Long. This person was even older and gave off the aura of someone past his prime. It was unknown if he was an old monster who had lived for several hundred years. This person was not in closed-door cultivation but was thinking about how to break through to the blue-robed emperor realm. Unexpectedly, Ouyang Long pulled him out. This lineup before Xiao Chen was about half the strength of the Purple Knight Sword sect. Even as a great Grandmaster level martial sage, Ouyang Long could not mobilize them. It looked like someone had convinced the Purple Knight Sword sect. Xiao Chen remained silent. He only remembered the name Purple Knight Sword sect in his heart. Ouyang Long was in high spirits. He smiled and said, "Haha. Xiao Chen, you have been very impressive in the profound domain these days. Unfortunately, you will not be able to return alive. Give this old man a longevity fruit, and this old man will not interfere with your journey to the central province," the white-haired old man beside Ouyang Long said in a somewhat hoarse voice. Xiao Chen's gaze did not linger on this group of people for long. He looked down from the sky and smiled. "Even if I give you another 500 years of lifespan, it would be a waste. You will only have the life of a great Grandmaster level martial sage. Feeding it to the dogs is better than wasting it on you." The white-haired old man raged, "What a sharp-tongued brat. Today, this old man will use your corpse to feed the dogs. Lay the formation." Right after the white-haired old man spoke, 20 martial sages with sword intent drew their swords and leaped into the air. Sonic booms rang out. Strong sword intents quickly merged in the air. Once they landed, a huge Purple Knight sword formation would form. With this sword formation, coupled with the strength of Ouyang Long and the white-haired old man, anyone under the blue-robed emperor would find it hard to escape death. Clang! However, just as the sword intents merged, a saber light lit up on Xiao Chen's body. A great perfection saber soul containing the will of thunder surged out from Xiao Chen's body. A resonant saber hum resounded, and a saber intent as vast as the sea spread out from Xiao Chen's body. At the most suitable opportunity, Xiao Chen instantly shattered the sword intents of these 20 martial sages, not giving them a chance to build up their power to its peak. Xiao Chen's figure moved, and countless saber lights flashed out of his body. Miserable cries resounded. The 20 martial sages had just leaped up when they vomited blood and fell to the ground, severely injured. Xiao Chen thought to himself, how unfortunate. There are too many of them. If there were not more than 10, with their scattered sword intents, he could instantly kill them all. The thing that the flawless saber Dao feared the least was being surrounded. With one move, Xiao Chen injured 20 martial sages who comprehended sword intent. Ouyang Long and the white-haired old man were greatly startled. Their plans were completely ruined. Whoosh! The white-haired old man's figure flashed, and he decisively retreated, completely betraying Ouyang Long. That old bastard! Ouyang Long cursed in his heart. Then, he turned around, preparing to flee. However, a white figure blocked Ouyang Long's path. I wonder, where did you get the courage to try and kill me? A swordsman who has not comprehended a sword's soul is already nothing in my eyes. Xiao Chen looked coldly at Ouyang Long without any expression on his face. Damn it! A ferocious look flashed in Ouyang Long's eyes. He drew his sword, and a sharp light turned into a sword light piercing towards Xiao Chen at lightning speed. Ouyang Long wanted to force Xiao Chen away and create a chance for himself to leave. This sword strike contained all of Ouyang Long's strength. The sword light was so resplendent that no one dared to look at it directly. The sharpness of the sword light could pierce through a tall mountain. However, without a soul, no matter how strong it was just for show. Xiao Chen did not move at all. The instant the sword light touched his body, he stretched out his hand and clamped down. The two fingers of his right hand firmly clamped down on the sword. Buzz! A strong force came from the sword. Xiao Chen's clothes and hair fluttered wildly. Spider-like cracks spread out under his feet. In the next moment, countless boulders soared into the air behind Xiao Chen. They were densely packed and covered the sky. However, Xiao Chen did not move at all. He only used 2 fingers to clamp down on this great grandmaster-level martial sage's sword. Xiao Chen's body was like a saber, as steady as a mountain. His exceptional sharpness intimidated everyone. Ouyang Long's old face flushed red. A bona fide great grandmaster-level martial sage with more than 300 years of cultivation actually had his sword clamped down on by a junior's fingers. Ding! Just as Ouyang Long struggled with all his might, trying to pull his sword out, a sword light charged at Xiao Chen's back. It was the white-haired old man who had returned. He smiled sinisterly and said, "The older, the wiser. Brat, die." The white-haired old man had grasped this opportunity very well. It happened to be when Xiao Chen clamped down on Ouyang Long's sword. If Xiao Chen gave up now, it would give Ouyang Long a chance to attack. This sword strike contained all of Ouyang Long's cultivation. At the very least, it could pierce through Xiao Chen. If Xiao Chen did not give up, he would be stuck in a dilemma. He would not be able to dodge the white-haired old man's sword strike. Hence, Ouyang Long felt incredibly cocky, smiling coldly. He felt that even if Xiao Chen did not die, he would be severely injured. Clang! Clang! Xiao Chen smiled faintly. He was not surprised at the white-haired old man's sword strike. Xiao Chen exerted force with his 2 fingers, and the blue dragon energy in his body circulated quickly. Thunder roared in his body. Before Ouyang Long's incredulous expression, Xiao Chen twisted his fingers, and the sword shattered. Ouyang Long vomited a mouthful of blood and went flying back. Then, Xiao Chen turned around and stretched out his hand. Like a treasured saber, all the sharpness gathered at his fingertip. A melodious sound rang out. That was the melodious hum of a saber. The night sky instantly turned pitch black. One could not see their fingers when they stretched out their hands, covering the sky. The instant night completely descended, Xiao Chen's fingertip happened to touch the tip of the white-haired old man's sword. The white-haired old man's vision went dark. Before he could adapt to this new environment, he saw a flash of light. Kassier! Kassier! The sound of the sword breaking rang out again. When the light grew brighter, a crescent moon shot out from Xiao Chen's fingertip. The light flashed and chopped the white-haired old man in half. Then, it soared into the sky. The crescent moon spun gently and turned into a bright moon hanging high in the sky. Xiao Chen looked at the full moon in the sky and revealed a satisfied expression. He muttered to himself, "Not bad. This is the true flawless bright moon. First comes the night, then the moon. When the night is perfect and flawless, naturally, the moon will not be stained by dust." However, there were several other reasons why Xiao Chen could kill the other party, a great grandmaster-level martial sage, in one move. Firstly, the other party had been careless. Secondly, this was probably the first time the other party faced such a miraculous saber technique. Most importantly, rather than calling the other party a swordsman, he was more like a scoundrel. All he had was his cultivation. He was far from being a powerful great grandmaster-level martial sage. Furthermore, he was on the verge of death and had lost his drive. When Xiao Chen killed him, he was like a withered piece of rotten wood. It was not worth it, he was too proud. Chapter 988. Such a scene startled Ouyang Long, who was underground. As he looked at the white-clad Xiao Chen under the moonlight, he exuded the air of a grandmaster. The air of a grandmaster. Since when did he advance to grandmaster-level martial sage? That's not right. His cultivation is still far from that. He is not a grandmaster-level martial sage yet. Ouyang Long did not dare to think further. Ignoring the other Purple Knight Sword sect disciples, he turned around and fled. With a thought, the bright moon in the sky slowly disappeared. As Xiao Chen watched Ouyang Long flee, a murderous intent flashed on his face. He stood on two lightning dragons and moved as fast as lightning, appearing like a flickering light. The purple lightning talisman in Xiao Chen's sea of consciousness spun continuously. The might of his will supported the lightning dragons under him. This made Xiao Chen look like he was standing on a bolt of lightning, becoming one with it. He was astonishingly fast. With a few accelerations, he caught up to the injured Ouyang Long. Bang! 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 Ouyang Long no longer had a sword in his hand. Furthermore, he was injured. How could he block Xiao Chen? In less than 10 moves, Xiao Chen knocked him to the ground, weakening him. Cough! Cough! Xiao Chen, don't be happy too early. This time, not only will you not be able to go to the king conferral ceremony, but you can also forget about surviving. Ouyang Long knew that he would die for sure. He roared in despair, "You will definitely die on the way." Before Ouyang Long could finish speaking, Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and pointed. A saber light flashed, and a bloody hole appeared on Ouyang Long's forehead. Xiao Chen removed Ouyang Long's spatial ring and weighed it before placing it in his universe ring. Ouyang Long's dying words echoed in Xiao Chen's mind. "You are walking a dead end, a dead end." Xiao Chen looked into the distance, in the direction of the central province's Bushin Palace. Xiao Chen's footsteps did not hesitate at all. He did not shrink back at all as he walked forward without hesitation. He was like the heart of a bladesman, not panicking, not hesitating, rather breaking than bending. In the sky, on a heavy warship, the members of the 3 sovereign clans gathered together. Inside the control room, Yan Shixi and the scions of the Jiang and Lin clans sat together. An old man stood behind each of them. They were the first elders of the 3 clans. In front of them, there was a mirror that looked like a water curtain. The scene of 2 great grandmaster-level martial sages dying at Xiao Chen's hands appeared on the screen. These people all sucked in a breath of cold air. They had never thought that Xiao Chen would actually grow to such an extent. The Lin clan's scion had a gloomy gaze as he said, "We really can't let this fellow live. Otherwise, he will definitely become the second Qing emperor. At that time, if he were to take charge of Bushin Palace, there would definitely be no way for our family to survive." Yan Shixi smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry." He absolutely won't be able to escape this time. Perhaps we might not even need to make a move. Although this group of people had seen Xiao Chen's strength, they were still very confident that they could kill Xiao Chen. Clearly, they had made ample preparations and had the means to kill Xiao Chen. 7 days later, Xiao Chen arrived at a city. This was a large city at the borders of the Profound Domain and the Tianwu Domain. It was called Strange Fire City. Along the way, aside from practicing martial techniques, Xiao Chen did not neglect the most fundamental cultivation. Xiao Chen had 49 peak spirit veins and the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, which surpassed a heaven-ranked cultivation technique. His cultivation speed increased by leaps and bounds. If not for the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation's 7th layer strengthening Xiao Chen's foundation, he would have successfully advanced to Grandmaster level Martial Sage long ago. He would not have had to wait until now. At this moment, Xiao Chen was only a hair's breadth away from Grandmaster level Martial Sage. With just a little effort, he could advance to Grandmaster level Martial Sage. However, Xiao Chen had even greater ambitions. Grandmaster level Martial Sage was not what he wanted. Xiao Chen wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to break through to peak superior grade Martial Sage and directly advance to Great Grandmaster level Martial Sage. Only then would he be able to use his absolute strength to suppress the White Emperor city's Xiao Hoju, killing all the people who were planning to cause trouble and ruin. This was not impossible. Xiao Chen did not lack resources at all. Furthermore, he had 48 peak spirit veins. Even the inheritors of the Holy Lands could not compare to him. What he lacked was only inner comprehension and vision. Those older generation Great Grandmaster level Martial Sages all had more than 100 years of comprehension and vision. What Xiao Chen wanted to do was to use this test as an opportunity to walk the path that those people had taken 100 years to walk in one step. This was also why Xiao Chen rejected Ing Qiong's offer to send someone to escort him. He could only walk this path himself. Otherwise, even if he went to the central province and appeared at the king conferral ceremony, he would just be embarrassing himself. Collecting his thoughts, Xiao Chen started to size up the city before him. It was too quiet, very uncoordinated. Xiao Chen scanned the streets with his spiritual sense. The streets were empty. He stepped into the city. There were stalls, restaurants, and shops on the wide streets. There was only some dust. This city had not been empty for long. Boom! When Xiao Chen arrived at the center of the city, a sharp, cold killing chi suddenly surged out of the silent city and soared into the clouds. Many elite soldiers wearing black armor and holding crossbows leaped out of the buildings in the city. Killing chi radiated from them, and there were at least 50,000 of them. When looking carefully, everyone's position seemed to have some tricks up their sleeves, like they formed a strange formation. The many spears of killing chi all pointed at Xiao Chen. Even Xiao Chen felt unnatural. His muscles tensed up, and his law energy quickly pulsed. Xiao Chen frowned slightly, finding this somewhat incredulous. Earlier, when he scanned the city with his spiritual sense, he had not seen anyone. Dang! 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 The sound of horses galloping resounded. A few large black horses galloped over from the distance, kicking up a trail of dust as they galloped over. The horses whipped their whips, and in a few breaths, a small group of 100 cavalrymen arrived before Xiao Chen. The black armor of the 100 cavalrymen before Xiao Chen was even thicker and more solid than that of the elite soldiers. Occasionally, light flashed between the gaps of the armor. It was clearly a complete set of superior grade sage grade secret treasures. A complete set of superior grade sage grade secret treasures was much stronger than an ordinary king grade secret treasure. A complete set of 100 cavalrymen was a large sum of money. Without 20 million black astral coins, it would be difficult to obtain them. In fact, even if one had the money, it would not be easy. The black horse that Xiao Chen rode was not an ordinary spirit beast. Based on its characteristics, it was clearly a peak warhorse, the Qilin horse. Just the horse itself was as strong as a martial sage. When the cavalrymen were 1 kilometer away from Xiao Chen, they stopped in an orderly fashion. They did not say a word, only looking coldly at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen searched his mind for information on Strange Fire City. As a large city at the borders, Strange Fire City was under the jurisdiction of the Bushin Palace. It had the responsibility of protecting the Tianwu domain in the first place. These soldiers on the roofs were all elite soldiers who had experienced hundreds and thousands of battles. They were much stronger than some of the disciples of the 9 ranks of the great families. The city lord, Wang Feng, had the cultivation of the blue-robed emperor. These cavalrymen before Xiao Chen might be the other party's personal guards. White-robed Xiao Chen, Strange Fire City's city lord, Wang Feng. I have long heard of your great name. As Xiao Chen pondered, a black-clad man stood on the tallest tower in the city and spoke to Xiao Chen. That tall tower was 10 kilometers away from Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen could only see a black figure with his eyes, he could not make out the other party's appearance. When Xiao Chen sent his spiritual sense over, an aura affected him. Similarly, he could only see a vague silhouette. Wang Feng stood on that tall tower, not doing anything. Wind and clouds churned behind him. The wind and clouds inhaled and exhaled all sorts of scenes, giving one a feeling of vast mountains and rivers, a majestic grandeur. The blue-robed emperor. This was the blue-robed emperor. No matter where he was in the Kunlun realm, he would be known as the blue-robed emperor. With one more step, he would be able to ascend to the Great Tao and enter the realm of Emperor Wu. The other party set up such a large formation but did not rush to attack. Xiao Chen did not know what they were planning. Xiao Chen did not make any changes. He said sullenly, the Haotian sect's Xiao Chen greets City Lord Wang. 10 kilometers away, on the tall tower, Wang Feng smiled and said, even in such a situation, you can still remain so calm. White-robed Xiao Chen, you are rather courageous. I, Wang, will not speak any nonsense. On behalf of the White Emperor City's Holy Lord, I invite you to stay in this small city for 1 month. After 1 month, the sky and the sea will be vast, and you will be free to roam. Wang Feng's words were rather beautiful. After 1 month, the king conferral ceremony would have ended long ago. Xiao Chen asked calmly, what if I say no? Wang Feng had guessed Xiao Chen's answer long ago. He smiled faintly and said, then, my 50,000 soldiers guarding the border will make sure you die without a corpse. Wang Feng's tone was calm and casual. However, right after Wang Feng spoke, the originally bleak killing qi in the city turned even colder. 50,000 pairs of eyes stared at Xiao Chen from the eaves. A cold killing qi seeped out of their pores. Most people would not be able to endure such a formation. Fear would spread to every part of the body. It would be bad if one could bring out half their combat prowess. Strange Fire City guarded the border. As long as Xiao Chen entered the Tianwu domain from this direction, the other party would immediately discover him. Whether he entered the city or not, the result would be the same. Sorry for the offense. At this point, there was nothing more to say. Even if there were thousands of soldiers, he had to give it a try. He had to go to the king conferral ceremony. Whoosh! The moment Xiao Chen pushed off the ground, before he left the ground, countless sonic booms rang out. Many black arrows flickered with light, giving off ear-piercing screeches as they flew towards Xiao Chen. Without needing to look, Xiao Chen could guess that these were not ordinary arrows. They could definitely injure a Grand Master-level martial sage. The 50,000 elite soldiers guarding the border of Strange Fire City were definitely not just for show. The arrows were like rain, covering the sky and the ground, not leaving any blind spots. Piercing sonic booms filled the air. The killing qi that Xiao Chen stored up earlier exploded at this moment. Heaven and earth trembled as it erupted. Bang! 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 A boundless saber intent shot out from every part of Xiao Chen's body. The arrows shattered in the air, unable to get close to Xiao Chen. Standing on a lightning dragon, Xiao Chen moved as fast as lightning. His figure flickered endlessly in the air, sending saber winds everywhere. The black-armored soldiers on the eaves leaped around, appearing very agile. The arrows moved like beams of light, shooting out continuously. The black-armored soldiers closely followed Xiao Chen. As long as he relaxed, 10,000 arrows would pierce his heart. The 100 black-armored soldiers below stared at Xiao Chen's figure. They did not say anything, their faces expressionless. Even further away, Wang Feng, who was on the tall tower, smiled faintly as he stood upright with his hands behind his back. Chapter 989. He himself would not make a move on Xiao Chen. The people of a higher circle would not do anything to him. Although Wang Feng could not come into contact with them, he had heard of them at his cultivation realm. If these 50,000 elite soldiers and 100 personal guards could not stop Xiao Chen, the White Emperor City's Holy Lord would have nothing to say. Back then, these 50,000 elite soldiers had even wiped out a rank 9 demonic beast pack. If they still could not stop Xiao Chen, it could only be said that he had overwhelming luck and was not fated to die. Xiao Chen, who was in the air, was not in a good situation. The 50,000 elite soldiers caught hold of his every movement. This made it hard for him to move. It looked like he was flickering and moving without a trace. In reality, Xiao Chen's position was fixed in a certain space. He could not charge out at all. If this continued, Xiao Chen would exhaust himself to death here sooner or later. White-robed Xiao Chen, this is just the beginning. Without the blue-robed emperor's cultivation, you will not be able to break free of my 50,000 elite soldiers, Wang Feng said softly from the tall tower. Up in the tall tower, Wang Feng saw all of this. He said softly, as long as you nod your head, I will stop immediately. I will guarantee your safety for 1 month. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. The methods of the 3 holy masters are rather gentle. After all, we were once colleagues. Walking further down this road, those people are not as easy to talk to as I am. What Wang Feng said was true. At the very least, the 3 sovereign noble clans would not show any mercy. However, no matter how one listened to it, it sounded hypocritical. They had already shed all pretense of cordiality. What was the point of putting on a false face? If not for the Haotian Emperor standing behind Xiao Chen, if not for fear of the backup plans that the Qing Emperor left behind, why would the 3 holy masters be so careful? This was originally Xiao Chen's king conferral ceremony. However, they delayed it by half a year, only officially announcing it to the world when Xiao Hoju accumulated 1 million military merits. Xiao Chen had accumulated 1 million military merits for the Bushin Palace. On Dragonwood Star, he had taken down 3 resource stars without expending a single soldier. After fighting the descendants of 3 sovereign martial emperors and risking his life to destroy the corpse refining pool, this was the result. They played tricks behind his back, causing him to be hunted down in the primal chaos domain, delaying his king conferral ceremony, and supporting Xiao Hoju to suppress him. Now, they were even more outrageous. Not only did they send the 3 sovereign noble families to attack him, but they also sent 3 sovereign noble families to attack him. Not only did they get the 3 sovereign noble clans to attack him, but they also publicly sent people to block him. Even so, Xiao Chen accepted it. He would just treat this as a test on his path to being conferred king. But he couldn't stand these people. Their actions were clearly like a slap to his face. Xiao Chen still said seriously that the slap was for his own good. If I did not do it, Xiao Chen would not do it. I gave you face by slapping you, but not only did you not appreciate my kindness, you were also stubborn. You deserve to be slapped. That's treacherous. Chen continued, Xiao Chen with the Chen with the Chen with Chen, 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 Chen with Chen. Chen with Chen with Chen. Don't be ungrateful when I give you face. This Wang's patience is limited. Xiao Chen's lips curled up. His figure paused in the air, and he smiled. City Lord Wang, I really do not need you to give me face. You can give it to whoever you want. If you think that you can block me, trap me, or kill me like this, then I can only tell you that you are gravely mistaken. Right after Xiao Chen spoke, he silently circulated his flawless saber dao. A cool breeze blew, and Xiao Chen's clothes and hair fluttered. Immediately, melodious tinkling rang out, sounding like the most wondrous treasure saber in the world trembling gently. The originally formless saber chi in the air turned into saber lights. Not only did they shatter the arrows, but they also broke every bowstring. The sound of the bowstring snapping and the beautiful hum of the saber merged together, forming an exquisite melody. 50,000 elite soldiers. Only the blue-robed emperor can cross. In that case, I will show you how to cross it today. My body is like a saber. Even my clothes and hair can become sharp. On the eaves, the bowstrings of the bows in the hands of the 50,000 elite soldiers were all broken. The arrows that were entangling people finally stopped shooting. Up in the tall tower, Wang Feng's face sank. He said coldly, "Personal guards, stop him." Thump. 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 100 personal guards of the city lord's residence wearing secret treasure battle armor soared into the air on Qilin horses. Black flames burned under the hooves of the horses. As the horses galloped in the air, these Qilin horses all looked incredibly ferocious. The blood of the ancient divine beast, the Qilin, flowed in their veins. As they neighed, they gave off an indistinct holy might. These 100 personal guards were only peak superior grade martial sages, not Grand Master level martial sages. However, they guarded the borders, often walking the edge of massacres, experiencing thousands of battles. Together with their full sets of secret treasure battle armor, their combat prowess surpassed that of a regular Grand Master level martial sage. With 100 people working together, they could even contend against great Grand Master level martial sages. A group of people whizzed over, like a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses. Their vigorous auras combined together, giving off a great sense of oppression. Clang! The 100 personal guards drew their weapons at the same time. Every one of them executed a different martial technique. However, they worked in tandem with each other, showing no signs of being scattered. Of all the people that Xiao Qin had seen, only the 13 keepers by Diwuk's side could surpass such tacit cooperation. When dealing with such a combination martial technique, one either had to find the other party's weakness or clash head-on. Aside from this, there were no other methods. Xiao Qin gave them a quick glance and rejected the first method. These 100 people had probably worked together for more than 100 years. The combination martial technique before Xiao Qin seemed to work as one, interlocking with each other. There were no openings to speak of. Since that was the case, Xiao Qin would use force to break through. His physical body had already reached rank 4 sage body. Furthermore, with the divine materials that he had consumed, his resilience and recovery abilities had already reached the level of the blue-robed emperor. Of course, this was just an ordinary blue-robed emperor. The Kunlun realm was vast and boundless. There was no lack of blue-robed emperors who had not reached the level of Emperor Wu, but their physical bodies had already reached the level of Emperor Wu's golden body. Emperor Wu's golden body was hard to injure by ordinary weapons, impervious to fire and water. At higher levels, he could even regrow broken limbs and regrow flesh. That was a horrifying level. Right now, Xiao Qin was still far from it. A huge shadow soared up from behind Xiao Qin. The owner of the shadow could not be seen clearly. However, the silhouette was that of a divine bird with folded wings. Even before it spread its wings, it was already so huge, like a tall mountain. Its shadow covered the 100 personal guards. Kunpeng fist, great rock spreading its wings, hating the sky for being too low. Bang! The instant the 100 personal guards clashed, Xiao Qin punched. The instant the Kunpeng spread its wings and soared, Xiao Qian's aura immediately overwhelmed the 100 people in front of him. The might of this punch completely brought out the 5-dragon force in his body. Xiao Qin formed the stance of the Kunpeng spreading its wings. When the fist wind swept out, it knocked back the 100 personal guards. Although the other party retreated, his aura did not fall into disorder. He pulled on the reins, and the horses neighed as their auras gathered again. On the other hand, after exhausting the Kunpeng fist, Xiao Qian's aura weakened slightly, he suppressed them. Interesting. The Qilin horse is indeed a peak warhorse. What Xiaochen praised was the horse and not the person. If not for the Qilin horse, even if his punch could not severely injure the 100 people, it would be enough to scatter them. However, if this was all it took to trap him and stop him, then it would be too naive of him. Today, Xiaochen had to pass through Strange Fire City. His face did not need this group of hypocritical people to give him charity. Xiaochen would definitely appear at the king conferral ceremony. An electric light flashed, and Xiaochen charged over first. There were no repercussions from clashing head-on. Wang Feng, who was in the tall tower, frowned, feeling that something was wrong. Bang! 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 Before Wang Feng could detect anything, Xiaochen threw 100 punches and 5 dragon-shaped clumps of energy. 5 dragon-shaped energies surged up and down behind Wang Feng, stirring up the wind and clouds. The dragons roared endlessly, their might lingering. Holding nothing back, Xiaochen faced 100 punches in a row. Blood leaked out of a corner of his lips. On the other hand, the 100 personal guards were in an even worse state. Cracks had already appeared on the skin under their armor. Blood leaked out and dyed their armor red. Blood flowed out of their 7 orifices. The initial sharpness no longer existed. The strand of aura that connected them also became weak. Wang Feng's expression changed slightly as he shouted, "Personal guards, quickly retreat." Smiling coldly, how could Xiaochen allow these 100 people to retreat? A divine light descended from the sky. Under Xiaochen's control, myriad heaven divine fists deities descending tripled his combat prowess. He punched with 15 dragon force. Dragon might covered Xiaochen's head, and his long hair fluttered. He wanted to finish off this group of personal guards with this punch. Blood splattered. When this punch flew out, a strong wind blew, and space trembled. There was a rustling sound, and the heavily injured personal guards in their armor turned into a mist of blood. Their bones turned to dust, not even leaving a corpse behind. The Qilin horses that Xiaochen rode howled in agony as they fell to the ground. Xiaochen stretched out his hand and waved, collecting the 100 sets of battle armor in the air into his universe ring. Good. Xiaochen, you have truly angered me. Today, this strange fire city will be your burial ground. Wang Feng's expression sank. These 100 personal guards had helped him through many calamities when he became the blue-robed emperor, so they had a deep bond with them. In the past few years, these 100 personal guards had also contributed greatly to guarding the borders. They were like Wang Feng's left and right arms. Now, Xiaochen actually killed them all. Furthermore, it was in such a miserable manner, beating them until not even their corpses remained. Wang Feng hated that he could not personally make a move and kill Xiaochen. However, he endured in the end. Form the 1,000 dragon arrow formation and trap him to death. The 50,000 elite soldiers whose bowstrings had been broken earlier had already changed their bows and nocked arrows. Beams of scarlet light soared into the sky from where the black-armored soldiers stood. As the arrows shot out, a vast formation suddenly formed in Strange Fire City. The arrows formed arrow dragons in the scarlet light that filled the sky, moving around in the air. The number of arrows increased. In the blink of an eye, the number of arrow dragons in the air reached 1,000. Scarlet clouds covered the sky, and the air froze. An arrow dragon flew at Xiaochen. The long dragon formed by the arrows showed a ferocious expression. It bared its fangs and claws, looking like a living creature. A scarlet light flowed on the dragon's body. Xiaochen tilted his body, and a bright saber light soared up from his body. Then, he ferociously smashed down like a saber chopping down. Bang! The arrow dragon shattered in an instant. However, the arrows did not shatter like before. With the support of the scarlet light, they became unbreakable. Chapter 990. Xiaochen vomited a mouthful of blood. He felt the blood in his body surge, and his internal organs trembled intensely. The energy contained in the arrow dragons was even greater than that of a grandmaster-level martial sage when he burst out with his full power. The arrow dragons in the Thousand Dragon Formation seemed to come in an endless stream, either crashing into Xiao Chen directly, tearing with their sharp claws, or sweeping with their tails. They covered the sky, leaving no space to dodge. In a few breaths, Xiao Chen scattered more than 100 arrow dragons. However, he did not have it easy either. If not for the fact that he had a Tier 4 physique, just the recoil alone would have shattered his bones. Up in the tall tower, Wang Feng showed a sullen expression. This Thousand Dragon Arrow formation had not been activated for many years already, so it exhausted a lot of energy. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Wang Feng would not use it. However, he needed to use it now. Otherwise, if he really let Xiao Chen escape, he would be utterly humiliated. Since ancient times, there has been no lack of demonic geniuses who fell along the way. Xiao Chen, you are regretting it now, right? However, there is no medicine for regret in this world. I tried to advise you nicely, but you stubbornly refused to listen. Even if you agree now, I will not stop. However, Xiao Chen remained incredibly calm in the Thousand Dragon Arrow formation, not panicking at all. He materialized his flawless saber Dao and weaved through the arrow dragons, appearing perilous all around. At this moment of life and death, Xiao Chen's heart remained calm. He was completely immersed in the battle, ignoring Wang Feng's words. After a long time, Xiao Chen's figure paused in the air. It was like he did not see the arrow dragons flying at him at all. Xiao Chen wiped off the blood from a corner of his lips and muttered to himself, indeed, only by comprehending between life and death can one further integrate the flawless saber Dao. It is time to break the Thousand Dragon Arrow formation. With a flip of his hand, the lunar shadow saber appeared in Xiao Chen's grasp. Then, he gently grasped the saber hilt with his right hand. Wang Feng showed a stern expression as he looked at Xiao Chen, who suddenly had a saber in his hand. He did not care. He smiled coldly and said, "You are already a spent force. Let's see how you are going to turn things around. You can forget about leaving this city in my hands." Just as Wang Feng spoke, he slowly drew that simple and unadorned saber by 2 centimeters. The half-inch saber light was as dazzling as the sun. A scarlet light spread in the air, filled with killing qi. Under the illumination of the saber light, it was like snow melting. Strange Fire City returned to normal, and the world became clear. The light was too dazzling. The 50,000 elite soldiers on the roof were caught off guard and they all closed their eyes out of reflex. Wang Feng narrowed his eyes and raised his eyebrows. He revealed a shocked expression, even more shocked than when Xiao Chen displayed 15 dragon force. A top-notch subdivine weapon. What kind of fortuitous encounter did this guy have? This is an existence that can enter the divine weapon ranking in the future. Previously, when Xiao Chen displayed 15 dragon force and a rank 4 sage body, Wang Feng had not been too surprised. As far as he was concerned, they weren't much of a threat to him. However, with a subdivine weapon that could enter the divine weapon list, everything would be different. All the divine weapons in the world were only as strong as emperor-grade secret treasures. In Xiao Chen's eyes, they were not startling treasures. However, the 10 divine weapons on the divine weapon ranking were very different. There were only 10 of them in the entire world, and they could rival primordial emperor treasures. Primordial emperor treasures were the peak emperor-grade secret treasures. There were only 3 of them in the entire Tianwu domain, and they were all in the hands of the 3 holy masters. If this saber really managed to enter the divine weapon ranking in the future, the 3 holy masters would not be able to do anything to this person. At that time, when Xiao Chen became a martial emperor and sought trouble for him, even the White Emperor City's holy lord would not be able to protect him. With this thought, Wang Feng could not help feeling regret. He should not have agreed to the White Emperor City's holy lord's request. However, as Xiao Chen said, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Now that he knew regret, it was too late. Bang! The lunar shadow saber was drawn, and many illusory figures shot out from Xiao Chen, materializing thousands of different saber trajectories, looking very dazzling. This was the Qing emperors drawing the saber, which Xiao Chen had not used for a long time. Earlier, he relied on his flawless saber Dao to contend with the 1,000 dragons. Although Xiao Chen was surrounded by danger, he managed to find the weak point of this 1,000-dragon arrow formation. All he had to do was force back the scarlet light filling the sky and separate the arrow dragons from the formation in the city. Then, he would find the weak point of the arrow dragons and send out 1,000 saber strikes in one breath of time, destroying all these arrow dragons and breaking the formation. This sounded simple, but it was incredibly difficult to actually do it. First, he had to force back the scarlet light and separate the arrow dragons from the formation. Without a peak subdivine weapon like the lunar shadow saber, any great grandmaster level martial sage would not be able to do this easily. Even if one managed to do this, it would be pointless if they could not send out 1,000 saber strikes in one breath of time. Wang Feng was right when he said that only the blue-robed emperor could break the formation. Unfortunately, Wang Feng ran into Xiao Chen. This 1,000-dragon arrow formation could not trap him. Ka! Cracking sounds rang out at the same time. The 1,000 arrow dragon skeletons were all destroyed. By the time the scarlet light closed in again, it was already too late. The figures merged back together, and Xiao Chen sheathed his saber. Then, he took a step forward, and his white robes fluttered. He only showed his back to the 50,000 elite soldiers in the city as he broke the formation. Wang Feng watched as Xiao Chen left, slowly vanishing from his sight. Wind and clouds surged behind him. Wan Feng's forehead opened, and an indistinct spot of golden light appeared. Overwhelming energy surged in his body. Ripples appeared in the space in front of Wan Feng, somewhat uncontrollable. All he had to do was take a step forward, and he could instantly catch up to Xiao Chen. Within 10 moves, he could kill Xiao Chen. However, Wan Feng did not take this step in the end. He scattered the heavenly laws in his body and closed the vertical eye on his forehead. The surging wind and clouds slowly calmed down. Wan Feng looked like he had aged 10 years in an instant. "City Lord, should we give chase?" the commander of the 50,000 elite soldiers asked as he flew forward and performed a cupped fist salute. Wang Feng did not reply. Instead, he looked up. A black warship stuck close to the barrier of the sky, flying as fast as lightning. Its speed was close to the limit of the Kunlun realm. Never mind. He already broke the 1,000-dragon arrow formation. There is no point in giving chase. Since those people are confident of killing him, we will just ignore them. After a long time, Wang Feng withdrew his gaze and said, "I will leave the position of Strange Fire City's city lord to you. I will not be returning for the next 100 years, Wang Feng suddenly said something strange. Then, his figure flashed, and he flew back to the starry heavens before that commander's confused gaze. Wang Feng suddenly said something strange. His figure flashed, and under the confused gaze of the commander, he flew back to the starry sky. Pu Ci. After traveling 500 kilometers away from Strange Fire City, Xiao Chen vomited a mouthful of blood, still feeling some lingering fear. In the end, when Xiao Chen broke the 1,000-dragon arrow formation and left, he felt a sharp gaze on his back, extremely dangerous. This made Xiao Chen very nervous. The purple thunder true fire and the lunar true flame stored up power in his eyes, ready to unleash the Taiji Yin-Yang flame diagram at any time. The blue dragon medallion that sealed the Qing Emperor's saber light for 10,000 years already appeared between Xiao Chen's fingers. If Xiao Chen guessed right, the owner of that gaze should be Wang Feng. Fortunately, the other party did not make a move in the end. Otherwise, it would have been somewhat problematic. The blue-robed emperor's cultivation is indeed terrifying. The purple and white lights in Xiao Chen's eyes vanished. He put away the blue dragon medallion and sighed softly. The difference between the blue-robed emperor and great grandmaster level martial sage was like heaven and earth, a vast chasm in cultivation. The heavenly sage laws in the other party's body had already been refined into the higher-level heavenly laws. Heavenly laws and heavenly sage laws were only one word apart, but they were completely different. The difference between the two was like quintessence and essence, there was no comparison at all. They were just short of an opportunity to condense a heavenly world in their sea of consciousness. Then, they could push open the Emperor's door and ascend to the Great Tao, embark on the Emperor's road, and become the person at the top of the pyramid. Xiaochen thought to himself, now that I run into the blue-robed Emperor, I have no chance of defeating him by relying on my own strength. The higher-level Taiji Yin-Yang flame diagram could more or less help him fight for a chance to escape. The saber light that the Qing Emperor left behind should be able to kill the blue-robed Emperor. However, that was his final trump card. Xiaochen could protect himself even if he ran into Emperor Wu. Using it on the blue-robed Emperor would be too much of a waste. I have to advance to Great Grandmaster level Martial Sage first. There is no point in thinking too much now. Xiaochen thought to himself. Earlier, when he was in the Thousand Dragon Arrow formation, he had been on the brink of death. This allowed him to gain several more comprehensions and improve his understanding of the flawless saber Dao. He was now 70% confident of advancing to Great Grandmaster level Martial Sage the instant he advanced to Grandmaster level Martial Sage. With a flip of his hand, a sage-grade medicinal pill for treating injuries and a sage-grade essence nurturing pill appeared in his palm. Then, he swallowed them at the same time. When he killed the medicine god Valley's Mr. Wei in the 9 layers of purgatory, he had obtained 2 bottles of sage-grade medicinal pills for treating injuries, enough for him to use for a long time. The injuries and exhaustion he suffered in the earlier battle healed quickly. In less than an hour, he would be able to return to his peak state. Just at this moment, Xiaochen frowned. A black warship appeared, and 6 people jumped off, blocking his path. 3 of these people were not unfamiliar to him. They were the scions of the Yan clan, Jiang clan, and Lin clan. The people of the sovereign noble clans finally appeared. His first senior sister's words were unfortunately spot on. The strength of these 3 had improved significantly. However, they still could not catch Xiaochen's attention. Xiaochen fixed his gaze on the 3 old men with extremely high cultivations that he could not make out. However, it was unrealistic for just 3 peak Great Grandmaster level martial sages to block him. Based on the other party's confident expression, the situation did not seem right. Xiaochen raised his guard. Make your move, elders. There is no need to waste words with him. However, please leave the final chance to kill him to the 3 of us. Yan Shixi remained expressionless as he looked at Xiaochen like a dead man. Then, he moved to the side with the scions of the Jiang clan and Lin clan. The 3 of them had suffered greatly at Xiaochen's hands before. This left a shadow in their hearts. If they could not get rid of this shadow, it would become a mental barrier in their hearts, forever preventing them from reaching the Great Tao. Only by killing Xiaochen personally could they get rid of this shadow. The 3 old men did not say anything. They casually waved their hands, and a secret treasure appeared in each of their hands. Boom! A boundless aura surged out and knocked Xiaochen back. The tortoise spirit shield, the profoundine umbrella, and the 10,000 beast cauldron, the emperor-grade secret treasures of the 3 sovereign noble clans. Xiaochen showed a grave expression as he infused the immortal will of thunder into his body. He stomped heavily on the ground, causing it to tremble before he managed to stabilize himself. 3 bona fide emperor-grade secret treasures were all here. No wonder these 3 were so confident. Emperor-grade secret treasures possessed horrifying might. Furthermore, 3 of them came at the same time.